Baruch Hashem, it's here. Amen. So what we're going to do is just kind of give you an outline of what the goal and the plan is today. We're going to go ahead and get started here very, very shortly, and we're going to probably run this probably right around noon or so. Then we'll take a lunch break, and then we'll come back at around 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock, we'll come back for Q&As. And that's going to be, of course, questions and answers that you may have to ask the rabbi. He's here. For most of you, you are on his program, so very familiar face. And then we'll run the Q&A probably right roughly into around 3 o'clock, 2:30, 3 o'clock. And then we'll start wrapping it up because the rabbi has to get back to Phoenix. So taking an airplane back to Florida today. So it's, a lot of work. But in any event, I'm going to go ahead and just introduce Rabbi Pinchas Taylor. As you guys know, an amazing, amazing teacher. He's an international speaker, author of books as well, a part of the Chabad. He's doing a lot of great work with the communities outside of the Jewish communities. His story is amazing, and I, for one, cannot paraphrase it. So if he has time, I'll let him share that. I had the privilege of driving 3.5 hours with him yesterday and got the full story. But again, I don't want to paraphrase it. So if he has some time, he can share a little bit of what the work that they're doing right now outside of the Jewish communities and reaching out to the world. So without any further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce Rabbi Pinchas Taylor. Yes.
How's everybody doing? Baruch Hashem, indeed. I'm just going to press go live on here, so we're going to go live, and that way we'll have it as posterity not only for the group that's here, but for others that may have similar questions or would like similar insight. Everybody excited? Yes. So the topic of today's lesson, the topic of today's discussion is what to do after you've left your former faith. Many people grow up in different types of faith environments. For one reason or another, it doesn't jive with them, and that's perfectly reasonable. And they start exploring what it is that is going to resonate with them. And for a lot of people, especially a lot of people in this audience, a lot of people that would be watching online as well, that is Torah, that is Judaism, or at least the wisdom of Judaism. Am I correct? Does that pretty much fit where we're all at? So we're all at different places, we're all at different stages. We've all for one way or another, we're all what we want is to learn more Torah. That's the common denominator, I think, between every one of us here and every one of us online, is that we want to learn Torah. We want to connect to Torah in a way that is relevant for our lives and our situations. And each person's situation is going to be different in how to go about that, but we're going to kind of delve into as much of that as we can today. So, you ready? So let's begin our journey talking about a great hero in the Jewish people, the very first person who is labeled as a Jew, Abraham, our forefather, Avram Avinu, who was a revolutionary. Now, I want to take a step back and kind of frame the world that Abraham was a part of, that Abraham lived in, to kind of get everybody to sort of see what the world looked like. Because remember, idolatry had already made its way into the world many generations before Abraham even came on the scene. How did idolatry come into the world according to the Jewish perspective, according to the Torah perspective? Idolatry came into the world as follows. Because you think to yourself, if all of those people in the earliest days, the grandchildren of Adam, they all saw their common grandfather Adam, who was formed by the hands of God and breathed the breath of life into by God, how could anybody worship an idol? And our tradition teaches that idol worship didn't take very long to infiltrate humanity. What happened was, even in the generation of the grandson of Adam, the generation of Enosh, There was idolatry. The beginnings of idolatry were already making their way. Now, how could that be? Adam, grandpa, is still there, is still alive. You could see him with your own eyes. How can idolatry make its way into the structure of civilization? And the answer is very interesting. This is what happened. So people, they started thinking to themselves, look, there's a lot of people in the world. God is, well, of course we believe in God, but God is kind of like the CEO of the company. And if I'm going to ask God for something, or if I need something, I don't need to ask every little thing from the CEO. I recognize that the CEO of the company has also designated certain managers to do certain jobs and maintain certain things. And so rather than going to God directly, what I'll do if I need some heat and light for my plants and crops to grow, I'm not going to go bother God. He's far removed. He's busy doing other important things. I'm going to ask the sun directly. If I need light and heat, I'll go to the clear manager that God has set up to give light and heat to the world. And I'll just ask that manager, the sun, for light and heat for my crops. I don't need to bother God. And the same thing happened with other needs. I recognize the value of the moon, right? It maintains the tides and helps us to calculate the time. So there's what that the moon has to offer. So if I need something that is relevant to the moon, what's going to happen? I'm going to ask the moon directly. And each item, each manager that was designated by God to set up the clouds in the sky, the thunder and the lightning, whatever it was, they became the managers. Of course, and the early generations said, of course we believe in God. But we recognize that God has these helpers, these managers in the system, and we'll just go to them directly. Well, when you see when your children see you asking the sun for help and asking the moon for help, even though in that original generation they had this idea that, okay, really we believe in God, but these are just the managers, before long, God is dropped from the picture, and the center of worship, the center of asking, becomes the sun, the moon, and the stars. That's how idolatry made its way. Now, what happens if I need to ask the sun for something, but it's nighttime out? What do I need? What do I do? So what I'll do is I'll construct a golden image of the sun that will remind me of the sun. And so when it's nighttime and I don't see the sun in the sky, I can still ask the sun tomorrow for light and heat to make my crops grow. And so this is how idolatry infiltrated. This is how idolatry became integrated into the world. This is how it took place. Because before long, children see mommy and daddy are praying to the sun, praying to the moon, praying for all these things, but never is God mentioned. God is dropped from the picture. And really, there is a way in which this became manifest as well that still applies today. So if God is dropped from the picture, and you can go to the sun, the moon, and the stars, some people just dropped God from the picture and were just living a life where nature was in charge, right? There was it's just Mother Earth. It's just nature that, I don't even have to have something or someone that I'm asking. It's nature. Everything just kind of happens. Everything was just a natural flow of things. And so Abraham, that still exists today very much. That there's no God. Things just happen. There's no providence in the world. There's no divine providence, no hidden hand in creation. Things just happen. Life just happens. I'm here as a cosmic accident. You're here as a cosmic accident. And this is the world that Abraham, Avram Avinu, Abraham our forefather, was living in. A world where people believed in a hapless system, where the universe was in control by either all sorts of powers, natural powers, and my life isn't really worth anything, isn't really full of meaning, doesn't have purpose behind it. And along came Abraham, and he looked at everything, and he saw the way that the world works, and he said there's a perfect order in creation. Things happen for a reason. It makes logical sense that everything that we see, every result has a prior cause, and that cause has a prior cause, that has a prior cause, which has a prior cause. That there is something that got this whole thing going. Abraham was the first to, on his own, discover God, discover that the world has a purpose. Abraham is called the first Jew for that reason. Abraham is called Ivri, which means the Hebrew, which in Hebrew means he was standing on the other side of the river. All the world believed in other gods or naturalism, whatever it was, and Abraham stood there and had rediscovered something that had only been preserved by a few righteous people in the generations, but he taught it to the masses. He started teaching and preaching and telling people there is a purpose to your life. There's a purpose to creation. There's a God that runs the show. In fact, you could say, a lot of people ask today, the idea of the Jewish people being the chosen people. So a lot of Jews are uncomfortable with that term. Because chosen sounds like, we're the chosen. And what does the Jewish nation being chosen mean? The Jewish nation being chosen is something that most people don't understand. See, every human being is chosen. Every human being was created with a purpose. God don't make no junk, right? Every person has a mission. Every person has a purpose. Everybody. Every single one of us. Everyone is chosen for a purpose. God put you here for a reason. This was the message of Abraham. God has put you here for a reason. So what does it mean the Jewish people are the chosen nation? Jewish people being the chosen nation means they were a nation that was chosen to inform the entire world that each individual is a chosen person. We were chosen as a nation to teach every person of humanity that you as an individual are a chosen person, that God has a place for you, a purpose for you, you have meaning in your life. This world has a goal and a mission, and you're a part of it. So the Jewish people being the chosen people just means that that nation was chosen to teach everyone as an individual that you are chosen by God for a particular purpose. We are a nation chosen to teach humanity as individuals that you are chosen. That was the special job designated to the Jewish people. It's a great job. I love embarking on that. But everyone is chosen by God for a purpose. Everyone has a mission in this world. You are a piece of the puzzle. God don't make no junk. So let's talk about finding purpose. Sound like fun? So far, so good? Enjoying? Yes. All right. So let's talk about purpose and about finding purpose and about living in this world where people are so desperate to find purpose and their purpose nonetheless. The question that I often ask people is, do you know why you get up in the morning? Why you work, why you eat, why you sleep, and repeat day in and day out? Why do you do those things? I mean, it definitely beats the alternative. But why? What gets you going in the morning? Is there a tangible direction, a purpose, a goal in your life, in all of your life's affairs? What's like the nucleus? What's it all about? Purpose is the underlying chemistry that makes you live your life. the underlying chemistry that makes you live your life. It is the nucleus of maintaining good self-esteem, of defeating fears, of maintaining positivity. Because if you live with purpose, you're going to be a happy person. Being happy isn't an end goal in of itself. You can't find happiness. Happiness is the result of living a life with purpose. You know what the proof for that is? What's the first thing that somebody says when they're not happy, when they're really not happy, maybe even depressed, not in the clinical sense? What's the first thing you say when somebody's not happy? They look around and they say, what's the point of all this? Happiness and purpose are two sides of the same coin. They're the yin and the yang. You can't search for happiness, but you can search for purpose, and happiness will be the result. So countless people have spent countless dollars and countless years investing in trying to figure out, why are they here? What's their life purpose? What's it all about? In fact, the CDC did a study a bunch of years ago, the Center of Disease Control did a study and found that 4 in 10 Americans have not discovered a satisfying reason to exist. In other words, that people, 40%, 4 in 10, have not found what their purpose is, are either questioning what their purpose in life is, or don't have a purpose in life in their mind. 40%, almost half of the United States. So it's fairly common for someone to feel that his life or her life is lacking purpose, lacking meaning, lacking fulfillment. Because of many people, because of this, many people come home from work every single day feeling tired, feeling unfulfilled. You know, there's many types of tired that you can feel. Some tired is best cured by rest, and some tired needs to come through peace. I'm tired, right? Because tired can mean I'm not living with a purpose. It's just day in and day out, hitting a wall, you know, going through all the motions of life, eating, drinking, sleeping, working, doing all the things that I do, but not living fulfilled, not feeling like I'm here for a reason, not embarking in a mission. So purpose and happiness go hand in hand, and that will fix sort of the tiredness as well. Because if you're happy and you're like raring to go, that tiredness that we're talking about also sort of goes away. Interestingly enough, there have been many studies, even by folks that are not religious by any stretch of the imagination, but the studies speak for themselves, that a person who is a spiritual person, a religiously minded person, a godly person who lives with purpose tend to be happier people. The more we integrate God, spirituality, religious beliefs into our lives, the more happy and fulfilled we become. It's just that's not me as a religious person talking. That's just the facts and the studies that have been made. That's just that they speak for themselves. So if you dread going to work and you find your job exhausting and unbearable, your purpose in that job is not known, or it's not in sync with your personality. So one of the interesting things that we find actually along this topic about faith, purpose, happiness, there was a professor at the Department of Psychology at the University of California, and she describes herself as not having a religious bone in her body, yet she acknowledges the reality that living a religious life or a spiritual life, a godly life, and that's different things for different people, makes a person have a better sense of well-being. You will feel fulfilled. You will feel like I'm here for a purpose. This is how we're meant to be. We're wired for faith. We're wired to believe. So there's a lack of general purpose in our society. Many people live with the outlook that they don't really know what this whole life is about. They don't know, they don't believe in God. They don't want to believe in God. It either makes no sense to them, or they just, it's more convenient to live a life that without God in the picture. And some people do it because of conformity as well. They don't access their true self, their true purpose, because they just want to conform and be like everybody else. I was talking to Richard on the way home, not the way home, the way here, yesterday, and we were talking about the idea of conformity and keeping up with the Joneses. And I look in my life what the other people have and are doing and whatever, and I want to copy that, and I want to be like that. And a lot of times, depending on what your environment you're in, that may not be the best idea, right? And your personal fulfillment isn't necessarily going to be affected or completed by looking at what the other person is doing, because your purpose and your fulfillment may come in a different way than that person. I mean that physically, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually, on all fronts of the human being. You know, we hear about keeping up with the Joneses, like usually we talk about that in like finances. Oh, if they made a party that's $100, I have to make one that's $150. Right, that's keeping up with the Joneses physically. But then there's keeping up with the Joneses spiritually as well, and I have to be like everybody else. I have to conform with what everybody else is doing. You know, that's one of the secrets, by the way, why midlife crisis exists. What's midlife crisis? Midlife crisis means that a person has been going through several decades of their life, kind of conforming to what other people wanted them to be and to do, and they got the job that their parents told them to get or society told them to get, and they've been going through the motions, and they wake up one day and they're like, you know what? This life, this is not me. I'm so unhappy. I'm so unfulfilled. These clothes that I've been putting on, this personality, this mentality, this doesn't fit me. This is not my style. And they make some radical changes in their life. And they dye their hair, and they get a fancy car, and they make all of these different changes. Now, I'm not saying that's the way to handle it, but the psychology, even the spiritual root of all of that is saying, look, I have this unique soul, this unique purpose inside that has been conforming to everyone and everything outside of me, and I've been living that life and going through the motions for so long, I got to just start over. Or I got to go back to the last time I remember being happy, when I was a teenager, and I could just ride like the wind into the sunset. So I'm going to buy a convertible, red convertible, and I'm going to dye my hair and look all young, or at least think I'm going to look young, right? Right? You're not fooling anybody, by the way, okay? You know. So this is sort of the reason that sort of thing happens. It's an emotional thing, but it's also linked in our spirituality, because who I am, who you are as an individual, right, is unique. God created you for a unique purpose, a unique role in creation. And that might not be what your friend, your neighbor, your coworker, society is doing. That may be a completely different sort of thing. So this sentiment in the midlife crisis, by the way, you can also see it. Some people only experience it or only kind of wake up to it towards the end of their life. There was an Australian nurse, a hospice nurse, who about 15 years ago, I believe, wrote a book. And it was called The 5 Regrets of the Dying. And what she did was she started interviewing her hospice patients, talking to them about their life, doing a little life review, how their life went. And she wanted to see, in the midst of their conversation, if there were any sort of common denominators with things that people regretted. And the reason she was doing was obviously not to bring up bad memories, but it was to sort of, if there were common denominators with the common themes amongst people, then maybe she could publish her works and younger people could read them and see, okay, we don't have to make those same mistakes that are so common amongst people who are getting ready to pass on to the next world. And she recorded her findings. Do you know what the number one regret of the dying was? The number one regret. Any ideas? Anybody? That was definitely up there. Along those same lines, I wish I would have had the courage to live the life that I wanted to live, as opposed to what others put on me, as opposed to the life and the job and everything that my society told me was the right way to go, how society defined success, how society defined goodness and love and all. I wish I had the courage to live according to me. I wish I was able to actualize my purpose. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychologist who lived through the horrors of the Holocaust, said that really what motivates people is the search for meaning. His whole concept of logotherapy, of what is it that a person is really after, that what can keep you going even in the worst of conditions, like a Holocaust, is the idea that what you're doing has meaning, that I'm searching for meaning, that even when I'm in the struggle, there's meaning to this. There's something, there's a reason for it. There's purpose in this. I don't like it, it's not good, I would never ask for it, but when I'm going through it, there's meaning in it. Because everything in our life has meaning. Everything that happens to us in our life, we have to stop thinking of it as it happening to us and start rewiring our minds as happening for us. Everything, the thing I like to describe when talking about Hashem, when talking about God, is that it's almost like all the situations that we encounter in our lives are targeted ads from God. Right? What happens in targeted ads? Targeted ads means that, okay, I Googled, shampoo, where to buy the nearest shampoo, Pantene Pro V. Right? All of a sudden, I start getting ads from Target, Pantene Pro V, Pantene, right? And I'm like, I really don't want this. But they think that they know you, so they keep sending you ads that are for your benefit, right? Just buy the Pantene Pro V. But all of our actions, all of our encounters in our lives are also sort of targeted ads from God and meant for our embetterment, meant to improve us, to bring us spiritually where we need to be. And that's the good stuff that happens and the stuff that we don't like. Right? It's targeted ads from God. There's meaning in everything, and the meaning is for you personally. It's hard sometimes to realize that. It's hard sometimes to reconcile that, because there's a lot of things that go on in our lives that we wish didn't happen. We wish we didn't have to go through. We wish we could have been in that situation or in that situation. But everything is meant for us. Everything is a targeted ad from God. There's divine providence in everything. You have a particular mission, and this is just sort of the way of sort of directing you on that mission. Okay? So far, so good? Yes. All right. So one of the things that it's been said, so again, Viktor Frankl, he's saying that the essence of a person is that he's searching for meaning. Like, we're wired for it. We need it so badly. We desire meaning. He said a person who has a why, a person who has a purpose, living with purpose, a person who has their why to live for can bear almost any how. In other words, if I have a purpose and I recognize that I'm on a mission and I recognize that everything is from Hashem and is for me and directing me, and then I can withstand anything. In order to find happiness and satisfaction in our lives, the first step is purpose. A realization that there's something higher which undergirds our entire existence. And Viktor Frankl writes, for success, like happiness, it cannot be pursued. It is something that ensues when we live with purpose. Now, how do you discover your purpose? And I wasn't planning on sharing any bit of my story with you today, but since it came up in conversation with Richard on the drive over, and he already kind of like spilled the beans and said that it's there. So I mean, we'll get to that. Let's put that on the back burner for now. But how does a person find their purpose? How can I look at my life and kind of figure out, navigate, what did God put me here for? So, there are There's a general purpose and then there's an individual purpose. So the general purpose means, okay, so the Jewish people have a purpose, which is to fulfill the commandments and to study the Torah and to spread that light to the rest of the world. The nations of the world have a purpose, a general purpose, meaning to live a moral life and settle the world in a godly way. Each group, each segment of humanity also has a collective purpose as well. That means that men have a mission, women have a mission, the prophets have a mission, the kings have a mission, right? Each individual faction, each group has their own specific missions and things that they fulfill as well. But as an individual, how can I, as an individual, think, what does God want from me? So all of our individual missions always have to fall into play, always have to be in sync with the collective mission as well. In other words, God is not going to ask something from me that is not part of my general mission. In other words, God is not asking something of me that pertains to another group, another segment. It's not like, oh, God wants from me that I go to the Himalayas and I go meditate 24 hours a day. That's not anybody's mission. So the mission that I have as an individual has to be in sync with my sort of collective part that I'm a part of. But we're going to learn today the tips and the tricks that you can, 5 in particular, 5 steps of finding your individual purpose. Sound like fun? Yes. All right, l'chaim to all. L'chaim. All right. So let's jump right in. In the days of the prophets, you could go to your local prophet and he can kind of like read your soul and tell you directly, like going to the doctor and getting blood work done. They could tell you, okay, what's the prescription that's needed for your life. But since we're not in the days of the prophets anymore, how can we, as individuals, how can we zero in on, how can we find our unique purpose? First step, first idea. What are your talents? What are your talents? Now, everyone has innate talents. Every single person. The reason that we have these talents is these are God-given strengths in order for us to complete our unique purpose. You don't just have talents, like you woke up one day and you have this beautiful voice that you can sing, right? That just happened to be, right? That's there for a reason. That's there because God gave it to you to fulfill your individual purpose. Again, all of us as human beings, our purpose is to bring the glory of God into the world. But my way of doing that and your way of doing that as individuals are going to be different. Because if my way was like your way, God wouldn't have created one of us. Each one of us has something specific that we're adding. Because again, come back to this phrase, God don't make no junk, right? So if mine was the same as yours, well, one of us wouldn't be needed. So obviously I have something and you have something. We both have something unique and special to offer to bringing godliness to the world, to making this world a place that radiates godliness. My thing is not going to be your thing and your thing's not going to be your neighbor's thing. So the starting point of that is, what are your talents? I remember the very first time that I took one of my young children to make a deposit in the bank. We were standing in the line. Right? Making a deposit in the bank is a rare thing, but we're standing in the line of the bank, and my daughter, she sees this whole line of people just walking up to the bank teller and handing over their money. And so my daughter thought that this bank teller has got to be like the richest person in the world, right? Because all day long, just lines and lines of people just dumping their money, right? Here you go. Meanwhile, what my daughter didn't know, and this was a perfect educational moment, is that the bank teller's job is not to just take the money. The bank teller's job is to put it in the proper place, put it in this account and this person's in that account. And if the bank teller doesn't allocate it properly, they get in trouble, right? That's their whole job, is to allocate the money properly. And so sometimes that's kind of the way in which God has given us our talents. God gave us our talents in order to bring godliness to the world. If you're just using it for like your own entertainment or your own pleasure, just for kicks and tricks, you're not really using it for the purpose that you were given. You were given, you are the bank teller that God has deposited this talent with. We got to use it to bring the glory of God. That doesn't mean that everybody's made the same. And that doesn't mean that everyone's going to have the same talent and bring the glory of God in the same way. In other words, if you have a talent in speaking, use it to communicate Torah, the Torah of Hashem. If you have a talent in music, use that to bring the glory of God to the world. If you have a talent in writing, or you have a talent in anything. And a lot of times, by the way, people like, I don't have any talents. Talent doesn't mean necessarily something that you can sign up for a talent show, enter a talent show in, right? Just because you can't be on America's Got Talent doesn't mean you don't have talent. Okay? Let's start with that. There are subtle things that you might have that you have a natural gift. We even call it a gift. Who's the gift from? Right? We call it a gift. Oh, that person has a gift. Who gave you the gift? So think about it like this. The subtle things sometimes that you just have a natural knack for. Subtle things like you have a sense of humor. You're a good listener. And a lot of the people that have these sorts of talents, especially the ones that are more subtle, they kind of shrug it off like, anybody could do that. Everybody does that. Oh. It's not like that. Having a sense of humor, having a gentle nature, having a good ear for listening, these are talents, these are priceless gifts. Being sensitive, being a good leader, these are priceless gifts that need to be utilized for the treasures that they are. The strengths that we have need to be honed in on and directed properly in our lives. And they certainly are tools bestowed upon us to complete our unique life mission. Again, if you're a good listener, maybe a therapist, maybe that's your, or not even officially, but maybe just that you bring the glory of God by listening and helping people with their problems. Whatever it is, it's all about bringing the glory of God to this world. And so again, step one of what to think of, what are your talents? Now, I don't want to call these step one because it's not like a checklist. I would say it's more like a Venn diagram. Venn diagram, so like you have this circle of, okay, these are my talents, and we have all of these 5 circles that are going to intersect in the middle, and in the middle is where my purpose lives. Does that sound clear? All right, so again, the first circle is what are my talents? Second circle, okay? And if we can get them to overlap, if we could see any overlap, I can again get a more honed in picture of what my purpose looks like. Second circle is what are my passions? What am I drawn towards? What do I enjoy? What am I passionate about? Everyone has things that they're passionate about, that resonate with them, things that they feel like, man, they're into it. They have a unique interest or driving force. Interestingly enough, it says in the Chovos HaLevavos, the Duties of the Heart, which was a medieval philosophical text, it says that just like God created every animal with an appetite for the food that best suits it, so too each person is drawn towards the work or drawn towards the lifestyle that best suits him or her. In addition, God designed each animal with the attributes that were necessary to attain that food. So in other words, the giraffe is interested in the leaves that are on the top of the tree. And so God created the giraffe with a long neck that can go directly to that food that it's drawn towards. So if God gave you the passion towards something, towards a certain work or lifestyle, He's also given you the form to be able to do that kind of thing. Okay? So again, what are your talents and what are your passions? They don't necessarily always line up, but when you can find where they do line up, you're honing in closer to your purpose. So far, so good. Okay. Now, again, what your passions aren't necessarily going to be what your talents are. So, like, I can be really, really into basketball, but my talents, not so much. Okay, so talents and passions, that's a good place to start. Now, past life experiences. Not past life like reincarnation, but past experience that you've had in your life. Now, we've all had things in our lives that we've gone through, some good things, some not as good things, that we've experienced that kind of give us an edge of understanding through our experience. In other words, I may have gone through something, or you may have gone through something that has sort of trained us in a way that we couldn't have gotten by learning it, but it came about through experience. And it puts us sort of ahead of the game and in a unique understanding or unique ability because we've had that experience. One example of that might be, a lot of people that go into the therapy world are folks that themselves needed therapy, which is fine. But the idea is that you have an understanding of how the therapeutic process works, and that you have a more keen understanding of applying it to others as well. A lot of people that have faced spousal abuse wind up going into groups and or become counselors for people that have also faced similar struggles. Because again, there's something that experience can provide that learning about in the books can't necessarily compete with. So sometimes the past experiences that we've had, whether they are good or not good, whether we perceive them as good or not good, can be things that hone into our life purpose, can help enhance the things that we do. And sometimes even the most subtle things, even the things that we, at the time, we were like, why did I even go through this? Or why did I have to bother with this? Can be very helpful in our skill set. I'm going to give you an example. So after my first year in yeshiva, my first year in rabbinical school, okay, I was 17 years old. And I came home for the summer. And I was looking for a summer job. I'm not gonna just relax at home all day. I wanted to make some money, take it back, have some available money for the year. But back then, especially, all of the laws and rules about child labor and how many hours they can work. I mean, the amount of work available for a 17-year-old, especially at the time, was very limited. I already exhausted my time as a bag boy at Publix. That's our Safeway, right? I've already exhausted my time in that when I was 14 and 15. And so I needed something that was going to be just for the summer, because no one wants to hire. Barely anybody. Not only the job's limited, but nobody wants to hire you knowing that you're only going to be there for 2 months, right? They don't want to train you. And so I looked in the newspaper, and again, the only job that I can find, right? There was no internet also where you can get, right? So the only job that I can find at the time was telemarketing, selling magazine subscriptions. And there was a whole deal that if you bought the monthly magazine, then you got the weekly ones for free, and it was this whole thing. And I was all fired up about Judaism. I had just spent my first year in a yeshiva environment, spending 12 and 15-hour days just immersed in the study of Torah, just really just enjoying it and soaking it in. And then you come back home and it's like you want to spend 4 hours each day calling people. By the way, I'm sorry if I called your house. I'm sorry. But calling people and selling magazine subscriptions, I mean, again, there's nothing wrong inherently, but it wasn't for me. I didn't want to be doing that, right? And a lot of folks who do jobs like that also, that's not the career that they want to be doing anyway for decades and decades. It's some transitional sort of thing, which is why I was hired just for a summer. And I thought, what a waste of time. And I could be learning, but I need to make money. But then when I went back to school the following year, so every Friday, what we did, we took a break from our studies and we went around to local businesses and we would go to, let's say, the Jewish man who was in the law office, and we'd ask him, you want to put on tefillin? You want to wrap tefillin? And I noticed that my second year, I was markedly better at convincing someone to put on tefillin than I was the year before. And the idea is that if you can sell something that someone doesn't want or need to them, how much easier is it to present someone with something that they do want and do need, right? So then, like going to somebody, you want to put on tefillin and sort of just, look, let's wrap, let's do it. And giving out Shabbat candles to the Jewish women. And I also gave, I had written at the time 7 Laws of Noah pamphlets. I was telling Richard about it. 7 Laws of Noah pamphlets that anyone that I encountered also. It wasn't just about the Jewish people. That I would also give them a pamphlet that explained the 7 Laws of Noah and living a life with purpose. And so the idea is everybody needs purpose. Everybody needs God. Everyone needs spirituality in their life. They just maybe don't know it yet. And so to present it, say, hey, look, I may have something that will be helpful, beneficial for you. You could take it or leave it. That's your decision. But if you can sell magazines, which you don't want and don't need, how much more so are you as a person willing to accept something that they really deep down do want and deep down for sure do need? All right? So again, all of those little things that happen to us in our life, those experiences that we have, whether we thought they were a waste of time at the time, whether we thought they were traumatic at the time, whether we thought that they were amazing at the time, but they are unique experiences that we had that shaped us in the ways in which we are, all of a sudden, it can fit into your purpose. It helps everything. Again, everything's a targeted ad from God. Everything's meant to shape us. Everything is for us. So again, we got what is your talents? What is your passions? And then we have what are your unique experiences? Okay? Number 4. Where do you find yourself in your current situation? Meaning all sorts of things throughout your life, divine providence has put you in the place that you are. You find yourself in this place with this network of people, right? With family members and certain neighbors and certain job and you have certain surroundings and connections and relationships, and all of those people where you're at right now have a place and a purpose in your world, in shaping in your purpose right now. Doesn't mean that necessarily that they're a part of your purpose in 10 years or 20 years from now, but right here, right now, all the people, all the connections, all the situations, the locations, whatever you are, that has a purpose for you in your mission right now. This is part of the plan, part of your purpose. You are here for a reason. You didn't just move here on the mountaintop. I was telling Richard that I see why everybody's drawn to Torah over here. It looks like Mount Sinai, on the drive. So the idea is that it is a part of your purpose. Where you find yourself, the people that you find yourself with, the family you were born to, the friends that you have, the network that you're in, the job and the people at work, whoever is in your life also play a key in your purpose right now. Okay, meaning that you can influence them, they can influence you, and they're all part of perfecting each other. Okay, so again, we got talents, we got passions, we have your past experiences, and we have your current situation. Now, the 5th one is a little tricky. It's a little tricky because of the fact that it seems to be the opposite of the other 4. But I'm going to tell you how they kind of fit together. So the 5th thing is, where is your struggle? Where's a place that you find it hard to do? Now, we all have things that we like to do and are easy to do, spiritually speaking. Like, oh, I can get into that real quick. That's easy for me to adapt and whatever. And then there are things that are like, oh man, I got to do that. That's hard. Sometimes it's in those areas that speak the most and are really inherent to what we're meant to perfect, what we're here for. So, for example, our personality traits, our undesirable personality traits, because we all have good personality traits. We all have parts of ourselves that are, we know those parts, whether we want to admit them or not. We all have parts of our personality that we're like, you again, get down, So whether that is our temper, whether that is our laziness, whether that is our addiction, whether that is our self-destructive behavior, whatever, you pick your thing. We all have things that we struggle with. Now, if there is a way that we're supposed to be, right, that the Torah tells us this is the way in which a person is supposed to be, and that's in conflict with something that's like really hard for me. Like the Torah says you're not supposed to be angry and hold resentment. It's like, but I really want to, right? And there's this struggle. Well, that may in fact be a part of your mission. Perfecting that, uplifting that, controlling that essentially may be something that is a key part in your mission. So again, if somebody struggles with addiction, well, keeping that under control might be a key part in your mission. It's a big mountain, but it's something that is manageable and something that God has given you the strength to overcome. And because of that, that might affect you might be able to use your talents to be able to control that, and your passions to control that. And many folks who are in the recovery community find solace in helping others that are in the recovery community. And in fact, that's the 12th step, is go out and help others that are in the same situation. And you can use your talents and your passions and your past experiences and your current situation to help you be able to fulfill that which is also a struggle for you. That's how they line up. So again, on the surface, it might seem like something that is the opposite. Like, talents, passions, that's all the good stuff. What about the bad, the struggle? The struggle also mixes in, right? Because if I am in recovery, right, and this is just one example of many, I may have been blessed with talents and passions and all of these things to help others maintain their sobriety as well. Same thing with, let's say a person struggles with stinginess, right? Every time they pull out their wallet to give tzedakah, to give charity, George Washington's like, ooh, right? He's been in there a long time, right? So that might be something that's inherently a struggle for you, but God may have also simultaneously blessed you with talents and passions and whatnot that are going to grant you money. So the reason that God has granted you the talents and the passions and the past experience to give you money may be so that you can counterbalance and counteract the thing that's a struggle for you, your stinginess. And so you have the money, God has given you that, to give it a little bit more often. So that it all balances out. It can be composed in sort of a Venn diagram where we can pinpoint. Again, I'm not expecting that by the time we leave today that everyone's going to know exactly what their purpose is, but these are tools that are very helpful in sort of pinpointing more clearly what your purpose may be. And that is how we as individuals uplift the world. The last step, tying everything together, is in engaging our success. So the answer is we base our success if a person does what they're supposed to do. How do I know if I'm successful? How do I know if I'm doing what my purpose is? If you implement these tools and you're successful at it, if it's working out for you, that is a indicator that God is helping you along the way, that you are actually living in sync with your purpose and doing the things that are correct to be done. Okay, so why don't we? I'm gonna hold here for today for the folks online, and then we can just talk. Sorry guys, you got to come in person next time. Have a wonderful and spiritually uplifting rest of your day. If I can help any of you along the way, please feel free to reach out to me, and we'll talk to you soon, God willing. All right. So that is how a person finds their individual purpose. Now, let's give it some relevance to everyone in this room as well. Okay, and I want to talk about some common positive features and common mistakes that I see in many folks that are journeying the journey that you guys are on. Now, if I'm correct, most people in this room have come are from Christian backgrounds, one denomination or another, and for whatever reason have been drawn to Torah, have been drawn to living a Torah-minded lifestyle, and that may mean different things to different people. Some people may have desired to pursue conversion in an official sense. Some people may have been wanting to become a Noahide or to embrace the Noahide lifestyle. Some are kind of exploring and not really sure. And wherever you're at, that's great. You know, Hashem looks at you and says, you're so blessed. You're so wonderful. You're so good. You mean so well. I appreciate your sincerity. I appreciate where you're going. I'm going to help you along the way. And I promise God is going to help you along the way. He's going to put the right people in your mind, the right situations in your life that are going to get you where you want to go. Number one mistake, don't think that you have to figure it all out right here and right now. Don't think that I have to say, well, I need to decide today where I'm going to be spiritually 20 years from now. You don't know. I don't know. Nobody knows. We have to look at life and our spiritual journey as like either a journey, like a path, or like a ladder even. And whatever rung of the ladder we're on, that's where we are right here and right now. And we serve God in the way that God said to serve him right here and right now. Right? That's kind of like, that doesn't mean that may not change and evolve or shift throughout the years. But where we're at now, we should serve God in the way of where we are now on the ladder, where we are now on the path. Okay, so I'm going to base my advice, I guess we can call it, based on a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, based on a Mishnah in the Ethics of Our Fathers. So there's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that says three things. It says three things. Number one, aseh lecha rav, make for yourself a rabbi. Then it says, kaineh lecha chaver, make for yourself a friend, right? And mikabel, receive everybody b'sever panim yafas, meaning that you're greeting everybody with, dan l'kav zchus, that you're judging everybody favorably, right? These are three steps that are mentioned in the Ethics of Our Fathers to living a good spiritual life. Okay, let's break it down each step, right? Aseh lecha rav, make for yourself a rabbi. Kaineh lecha chaver, make for yourself a friend, and judge everyone favorably. Okay, so here's let's go through the steps as they're meant to be, and then let's go through some of the mistakes that people have, that people often fall trap into. So the way that it's meant to be, aseh lecha rav, establishing for yourself a rabbi, means that you have a mentor, someone that you are kind of like going in their direction. There are a lot of rabbis out there. There might be a lot of viewpoints even out there, but you choose that one that kind of fits with your, like I get this one. I appreciate the knowledge, the presentation, the whatever of this particular rabbi. I'm going to follow in his direction. I'm not going to go like, sometimes you ever I know many people are guilty of this. You ever have an illness and you start Googling around what the illness is? And you wind up really scaring yourself, right? It's like, I got a headache. Oh, let's see. Oh, meningitis. Perfect, right? It's like it could be 1,000 things, but you've determined, or you go shopping around your friends, and your friends start saying, oh, when I had a headache, it was this. Oh, when I had a headache, it was this. And then like you start scaring yourself. Meanwhile, it's just like, okay, take an aspirin, 2 hours later, you'll be fine, right? So sometimes with our spiritual ailments, we want to like ask all around. I'm going to ask this rabbi and see what this rabbi says, and then we end up getting so confused because we haven't developed the foundations. We don't have the foundation. And it just all sounds like a bunch of random opinions and views, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is so confusing. So aseh lecha rav, it says it specifically in the singular sense in the Mishnah. It doesn't say aseh lecha rabbanim, make for yourself rabbis. It says aseh lecha rav. Because if you're going to start asking and going and searching and whatever, you're going to wind up in like, right? What happens? Why does a deer freeze in the headlights? Anyone know why a deer freezes in the headlights? Right, you would think that a deer, right, when confronted with the headlights, okay, it's scared, so like pick a direction to run, right? Run left, run right, run up, right? Like, run somewhere, but don't just stand there. Because what happens is that when the deer is in the headlights, the deer wants to run in every direction at the same time. And therefore what happens? It freezes because you can't run everywhere at the same time. And a lot of people on our spiritual journeys, I want to listen to this rabbi and go to this rabbi and this. Oh, I like what this. Oh, but I like what he says. And I like this. And then we're just like, oh, what do I do? We become the deer in the headlights, right? And that's what the Mishnah is warning us about. It specifically doesn't say aseh lecha rabbanim. It doesn't say make for yourself rabbis. It says make for yourself a rabbi, a mentor, a teacher, right? Because again, especially without the foundations, listen, it all just sounds like a cacophony of confusion. Like, I heard this from this, but I heard this from this. So which one's right? Which one's wrong? Does this one not know it? It's not like that. But with the cacophony, with everything being presented, it's not going to work out well, and you just wind up being frozen. So just kind of go with the flow, choose a path, kind of as best as you can, stick with it. Okay. Another reason, and we'll go into the mistake that I see many people have, is that they don't have a rabbi that they consult with for things. And what ends up happening also is you become your own rabbi. Oh boy. Whether you're Jewish or not Jewish or wherever you are, that don't end up well. That doesn't end. And we start operating and doing things that, again, maybe are not meant for my purpose where I am right now. And I want to do this, and I want to do that, and I saw this, I like what this guy does, and we see a whole cholent of Jew, right? You see, I watched a YouTube video, and there's a rabbi in Israel that's got this strymel. He's got this big fur hat, and he wears a white garb, and he has this, this and that, but this guy has this. So you wind up, I see some people, they come to shul also, in synagogue, right? Jewish backgrounds, everything like that, and the guy's got like Breslov tzitzis with Satmar hats, and then with this type of this and this type of that. He prays from a Sephardic sitter, but he keeps all the Ashkenazic customs, and it's like, dude, I appreciate the sincerity, and it's all good. We judge everyone favorably, and it's all good stuff. It's coming from a good place, but you gotta choose a path. It's gotta be a path that you're on. Okay, we got to be a goal. If I'm standing here and I want to go in that direction, I gotta decide. Okay, which path up the mountain am I going to take? Right? I can't just say, well, I'm going to go halfway up the mountain on like this, and then I'm going to jump over to this half, and I'm going to climb up there. No, that's not. You pick a path, and that's how you get up the mountain. Okay, so that's again one thing we're supposed to do. Aseh lecha rav. Have for yourself a rabbi, have for yourself a teacher. That doesn't mean, by the way, that you can't listen to other lectures and lessons from other rabbis. That doesn't mean, that's not what we're talking about. It shouldn't be like, oh, well, this is my rabbi, so I never listen to any other podcasts or YouTube lectures or whatever it is. That's not what we mean over here. Learning is important, and you can learn from a variety of sources. But when push comes to shove, and I'm implementing something in my life, that should be under the advisory of a specific rabbi. Okay? I never ever told anybody not to, even folks that are in my ARC program online. I never told anybody ever, and I never would. Don't listen to this one or that one, or you don't listen to YouTube lectures, or don't join other. Nothing. Never ever uttered anything remotely like that, because education is important. But when push comes to shove, how am I implementing that in my life, practically speaking? You got to have one go-to. You got to have one mentor. Aseh lecha rav, not aseh lecha rabbanim. Okay, so that's number one. So aseh lecha rav, koineh lecha chaver. Establish for yourself, make for yourself a friend. The more we can come together and talk to other people that are in similar boats, that have maybe left Christianity, or maybe not even left Christianity, but are interested in Torah with a Christian background, and they come from a Christian background, to talk to people, that be of support to each other. And that's why I'm so thrilled that I'm connected with all of you, that I'm connected with Richard, and that you actually have a physical place that you meet and you worship and you pray and you eat and you study together on a weekly basis. It's a wonderful thing, and there's so many people out in the United States that would crave such a situation, because again, it's hard, and I really feel for people that are coming from this, because I see the sincerity, and there's in the Jewish world, unfortunately, many times, there's apprehension as to why people want to get it, like come to synagogue and whatnot, if you're not of the Jewish faith, right? That, well, they want to convert us. Do they want to? What? There's all, because they don't know. They haven't been with the people who have made the journey. I've been with a lot of people that have made this journey over the years. I'm a young rabbi, but I have a lot of experience in this particular area. And maybe I'll share with you some of my story in a few minutes. But that's a lacking certainly in the religious world, but in the Jewish world as well, in general. And there are a lot of people that are making the journey on their own. They're living in the middle of Tennessee somewhere, in the middle of Nebraska somewhere, in the middle of Georgia somewhere, and they're trying really hard to do what God wants and live a godly life, but they have no sense of community. They have no Jewish community. They have no non-Jewish community. They're just kind of like, out in random pockets of places. Thankfully, you guys have a community setting where you can get together no matter what your background is. The goal here is that everybody just wants to learn Torah and to connect to Torah and deepen their understanding and application of Torah in their life, which is exactly how I mold the ARC program online. The ARC program can't compare to establishing a place in person, like a place where you meet every week, but it's what we have. It's what we have available to us. But people would really treasure and really benefit from having places like this around the country, because there's so many people out there that are really sincere but have nowhere to go. Okay, so thank you, Richard, and thank you all for being a part of such a place that are just, we got one goal: live according to what God wants from us, embrace Torah in whatever that means for us, where we're at, and it's a beautiful thing, a really beautiful thing. So, koineh lecha chaver means to talk to people that are, you establish friendships, relationships with people that are kind of all along the same journey. That doesn't mean that you do what they do, or that's for the rabbi. But it means that you have the support group. You have where someone you can talk to about your struggle. You had a struggle with your family about your religious beliefs. You have struggle with your spouse, with your friends, whatever, because of your religious belief. It's been difficult for you. It's been an uphill battle, and just having someone that you can relate to in these matters is something so significant. And the last step is, what does it say? Dan lekavschos, judge everybody favorably. One big mistake that I see amongst folks in the world that have come out of Christianity, or have not, again, I don't want to use the term come out of Christianity, because everyone's welcome. A Christian that wants to understand more about the Torah, God bless them. They're always welcome. And I know that's Richard's philosophy as well. As long as you're not trying to convert people to Christianity, right? As long as you're just trying to learn Torah and embrace it and understand it, all should be welcome. Okay, but here's where I find this is a big issue amongst folks that come from Christian backgrounds. One thing that happens a lot of time is that their religion, their faith that they formerly believed in has been dismantled, and they don't believe it anymore, and they reject it. And a lot of people live with a resentment towards the faith or towards the people that encourage them in the faith, their former pastor, their former minister, their former priest, whatever it was. And what happens sometimes is that their religion becomes bashing Christianity, right? The whole spiritual high, there's their religion, their mission, they want to be the one that's going to bash, and they send memes and they write things and they curse people out who are commenting, and somebody mentions, I can't tell you how many times someone will comment innocently something and they'll quote the New Testament. I'll put something up on my public Facebook page, for example, and someone will, again, innocently, it's a public Facebook page, right? Anyone can say anything they want, and the person puts up a quote that's pretty nebulous. It's not something directly instigating conversion or anything. It's something that kind of sounds like whatever I said. So okay, whatever. Say what you want to say. It's an open forum. But then all of a sudden, out come the hawks that they got to fly in and say the New Testament is blah 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 blah, and Jesus was blah. Relax. All right, relax. Everyone's on a spiritual mission. Unless someone is actively trying to convert you, and in which case I would just suggest walking away, right? And just leave it be. Like, all right, man, I'll be happy to talk when you're more open. But most people are not out to convert you, right? They're not knocking at your door and, trying to... And so wherever somebody's at spiritually, whether they are currently a Christian, whether they're a Noahide, whether they've converted to Judaism, whether they're Jewish, whatever you are in the spectrum of humanity, got to judge people favorably. Got to say that really this person they want God, but they're probably misguided. My religion shouldn't be just bashing the place from which I came. And again, I get the idea. I get why it's kind of satisfying, because resentment is, why do we have resentment? Because our Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, gets a certain degree of satisfaction. That's what he lives on, is resentment. Anger is like, he likes it. He's like, yeah, you tell him. You can put him in his place. Yeah, you tell him. No, I don't think that's the path. That's the appropriate path. Again, if somebody's coming to missionize you, it's a different story. But we have to make sure that our religion isn't centered upon dismantling our former religion. That's one of the reasons why I started the ARC program. One of many. But the ARC program is meant to be a place, okay, so now after you've dismantled and your former faith and beliefs, you no longer believe those things. So a lot of people just kind of like, they get stuck there, right? And their whole religion, again, becomes bashing, the dismantling for other people and trying. After you dismantle, you got to rebuild. You have to get, so if you want to learn Torah, if that's the direction that you've been drawn to, and again, whatever that means for you, that doesn't necessarily mean pursuing conversion. That just means living a Torah lifestyle. And there's a different way to live a Torah lifestyle as a Jew, as a Noahide, as a convert. There's different ways to that expresses itself, but we're all coming together under the umbrella of living a godly life based on the wisdom of the Torah. We got to build it up. We got to build something. I have to understand. So that's why the program focuses on the foundations that unite us all, right? What do we know about God? What do we know about purpose of humanity? What do we know about prayer? And we delve into it. It's nothing It's not just a dry teaching of laws of the 7 laws of Noah. This is something that's for everybody. It's the wisdom of the Torah that shapes all of us and that can be implemented by all of us. We've been going 5.5 years strong, and we'll never, ever run out of material because the Torah is an infinite wellspring. And I can't thank all of you that are a part of it enough for being a part of it, for coming and learning and watching the videos and commenting and building an online community world where we're all set with the same mission of learning about the Torah, serving God from wherever I'm at right now on my journey. And that's why I think Richard gave them out to everybody, but I wanted to give to everybody who was here a copy of my book, Pillars of Faith, which again, systematically and thoroughly goes through the foundations of Torah and gives us a clear indicator. Why do I believe in God? How do I know there's a God? How do I know the Torah was given at Sinai? Place of man in the world. Why do bad things happen to good people? Belief in Mashiach, the Messiah. Why should I believe in that? All a reasonable approach to these particular beliefs. And I hope that it's something that you'll enjoy, that you'll take home with you. And that is my gift to you. I wanted everyone who came today to walk away with it. One of the things that the Rabbi taught is that even when you're granted a spiritual gift, that you should contribute something towards it, because when you contribute something towards it, it has more value in your mind or in your heart. It's something more real. So even when Chabad goes around putting mezuzahs on Jewish doors that don't have them, so even then, even if you're not charging for the mezuzah per se, put $1 towards it, put $10 towards whatever it is. Not that you're buying it per se, but just that when you give something towards it, it's something that has more meaning for you. You treat it as not like, this is something that I got like at the local, that show I went to, I'll just kind of toss it in the corner. It means something more to you, even when you pay just a small amount towards it. So if you would like to, put something towards the Pillars of Faith, you're certainly welcome to, give you a Zelle or whatever. But it's something that I did want everyone to have as a gift. So if you don't want to, no problem. I'm not here to sell anything. This is a gift for you. We are going to work together. We're going to work together to grow the knowledge of Torah in the world. And I think that right here in Shiloh is a living example of what can be established throughout our country. And I want to share with you something that I was telling Richard about, and I have a little special something for him and for the community as well that I like to give to you before we, I guess, break, and we'll do questions and answers. And as long as I'm here, I'm happy to field any questions. I'm here for you. I just love and appreciate your spiritual journey, and super happy to be a part of it. One of the things that I was talking to Richard about on our drive and in our previous phone conversations. So anyone in this room hear of the Rabbi Daniel Lapin? Yeah. Okay, if not. So he has an organization called the American Alliance of Jews and Christians. And so he's getting up in age, and we had been talking right before COVID about maybe me kind of like getting involved with that organization and kind of sort of passing the torch and whatnot. Well, what I decided to do, rather than go in someone else's mission and path, was to do something similar, but create my own sort of organization. And so what we created, we call it the American Faith Coalition. And the American Faith Coalition now is sort of like the overarching body that the different services that we provide are kind of like under. So in other words, the ARC program is a group study program that is offered by the American Faith Coalition. And personal coaching is a service that's provided by the American Faith Coalition. And hospice service thing that I do in Florida, this is all under the umbrella of the American Faith Coalition. The idea is enhancing people from whatever background you are, enhancing people's relationship with God. That's what we're about. Doesn't matter what your background is. You want to learn Torah. It's specifically enhancing our relationship with God through the teaching, the wisdom of the Torah, the Hebrew Bible, which is one of the reasons that I called it the American Faith Coalition, not the World Faith Coalition, because in America, you may not know it today looking around, but our country was founded upon the principles, the values of the Hebrew Bible. Right? It was founded that there's a God, right? We're one nation under God, right? We are together in this. We believe that God wants righteousness, that God wants us to do certain things, right? To live a righteous life, and that those who live a righteous life are rewarded, and those that are not living a righteous life will, in the end, not be rewarded, to put it lightly, right? That there's a path and a trajectory to our existence in this world. These are very much embedded in American values. And it's somewhere where whether you're Jewish or from a Christian background or anywhere in between, it's something we can unite on. The wisdom of Judaism, the wisdom of the Hebrew Bible. And the reason that I bring it up is because Richard and I together are going to kind of make this as like an official chapter. The Sholo congregation here is going to be our first official chapter abroad under the American Faith Coalition. And the idea is that in other places around the United States that we can form communities where people, again, if you're in a pocket in Nebraska somewhere, whatever, that we can transform it. Not only that should it be learning accessible online, but that folks that live in drivable proximity to each other should be able to get together and formulate places that they can worship together on a regular basis, that they can study together, right? And I'm happy to provide the guidance that would be necessary to, again, help everybody along on their mission. And so what I wanted to do was, because this is a special it's a special occasion. It's a special, special symbolism, I guess, behind it. One of the things that we say in Judaism when we mark a special occasion is there's a special prayer, the Shehechianu, right? Shehechianu means thank you, God, for bringing us to this occasion. Thank you, God, for allowing this to happen. Also, it's an implementation of, it's kind of messianic. Not Messianic Judaism. I'm saying Messianic in the sense that, like it says in Zechariah 8:23, in those days, the nations of the world will come and hold on to the clothing of the Jew and say, come teach us, please teach us, because we know that God is with you. And so I think it very powerful that we together are embarking on this mission and help bringing Mashiach a bit closer, bringing this awareness of God, bringing the fulfillment of Torah through the leadership of the Jewish people. Okay, and so the symbol of Mashiach being of coming, it says that it will be heralded by a grand shofar blowing. Right, the shofar will sound, and everyone will sort of like wake up, and that'll sort of usher in the time that we all await. And furthermore, on our homes and on our businesses, we have in Judaism a mezuzah. Mezuzah is not only the commandment of God for the Jewish people, but it's also a symbol of protection. God is sort of watching over us, and wherever we go, whether we're coming into our home or leaving our home, we think, okay, I'm bringing God with me. God is entering into the home with me and exiting the home for me. So what I have is just a small token of affection and friendship for Richard and for the congregation as well. I have this little plaque made. It was actually done by a Jewish artist, and what it has is the Shehechianu prayer, right? The shofar, right? And the mezuzah, right? Which is a symbol of protection. And so this is like an art recognition of the things that we are hoping to establish together. So I hope that you'll have this and see this and see it with pride, and together we're going to usher in a world of goodness. I've also brought a something for either the office, the congregation, whatever. It's a fancy schmancy tzedakah box, a charity box. It's an artsy one, right? Which again should also serve as a reminder to live a life of giving. That's the idea. We're not going to build new buildings with the change that's in here, but it's to remind everyone to live a life where we're thinking about giving to those around me. So I'd like to present these to Richard now, and we'll hold here for right now.
All right, family, we're going to go ahead and proceed. Did everybody have a good lunch? All right, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. And we praise Hashem for giving us the sustenance and the provisions that we need every day. Amen. What we want to do now is, this is the second part of the lecture for today, and this is what we're going to open up with Q&As. So what we want to do for today, as far as the questions and answers, we want the question and answer to stay more in the subject of your journey, where you are today in your journey, and or questions about Judaism or Torah or whatever case may be. If we can stay within that framework, it will be greatly appreciated. Nothing related to theological differences or even dealing with apologetics or any of that. Tovia, that's something that will be more a question for Tovia, which will be July 11th. Okay. But today, with Rabbi Pinchas Taylor, what his purpose here for us today is to help you in your journey. So we will appreciate if the questions stay just for today within that framework of your personal journey, and or questions that you may have, concerning anything related to, okay, what do I do now? Coaching, for instance. If you need any advice with coaching, he'd be more than welcome to answer that. If you got more theological question, you can always go into his website or into the Ark and get a hold of him there, and he can answer. It's not that we're trying to dodge question. It's just that for the time frame allotted, we wanna make sure that it is constructive. That's all. And this, again, the topic for today is what now? What do I do now in my journey? Where I'm at? What are my options? What does this look like? And I know that all of you have all these different kinds of questions that the rabbi's here and will be able to address a lot of that for you. And again, give you coaching and where to go from here, essentially. So without any further ado, let's welcome back Rabbi Tobias Singer. Pinchas Taylor. Sorry. I think I got the. Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
Everybody good? All right. So here we are again. So the purpose of today's Q&A is more to be like practical about your life, your situation, where you can go from here, gleaning from other people's journeys as well. Because again, we're all on different journeys. We're all going up the same mountain. We're all trying to connect with Torah, but there's logistical situations involved. There's practical situations involved that sometimes mold our life in different ways that it's not necessarily going to be what your neighbor is pursuing. Or so we're going to try to address everybody's questions as best as possible where you're at on your life journey in the here and the now. Sound good? All right. And if you do have a question that is different than that, you can feel free to ask, and I may just defer you to keeping in touch in the future. And like Richard said, doing it online if you had a specific question that's kind of outside the scope of that discussion. Okay.
So what we're going to do is we're going to do, of course, raising hands, and then we'll give you the mic because we are recording. We want everybody online to be able to hear the questions, because there might be a question that somebody's struggling with online, that they can get it. So make sure that once you raise your hands, we'll have two people here to give you the mic, and make sure that you speak into the mic, okay? That's about it. So who wants to first start with the first question for today concerning the subject that we talk about, what now? Anybody? Come on, people, because I know that the minute the rabbi leaves, you're going to ask me.
And you have a lot of good answers for us. So I said you have a lot of good answers for us. So Rabbi, so here's kind of my journey. Just shortly, I'm Jewish by heritage, born into a family that was raised in the Catholic Church, and then into Lutheranism.
Jewish by
heritage, by birth. Yeah.
Your mother's
my
Jewish.
Mother's Jewish. Yes.
Okay.
My grandfather's Jewish. So
your mother and her mother's Jewish.
Her father, my grandfather.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Yeah. And so I remember when I was a kid that God was calling me, even as a small child, that He was calling me to be, and I loved God with all my heart during that time. But going through religions, it kind of confuses your faith with God. So in Catholicism, it was kind of a different thing, but I still wanted to serve God. Being a Lutheran, it was a little bit different, but I still wanted to serve God. But I had so many questions about spirituality and what that meant, and be connected with God, and I wasn't getting that there. And then so I went to checking out all the other religions around the world, and ended up delving into New Age practice and witchcraft and Druidism, and ended up in a very dark place by the time I was age 37 years old. And all during that whole time that I was out there, God was calling me, and I knew it, and I was avoiding Him, and finally I found out that God was done with all my games, and He pretty much knocked me down, and I ended up calling on God and asking for His help, and He drew me out of a dark situation. That was back in 1996. There was not very many Jewish communities around at that time. As a matter of fact, none around in my area. But I wanted to pursue that back then, but I didn't know where to go. And so God ended up bringing me into the church, where I became a Christian, and still called by God to go out and to share the good news of what His love for us and love for people. And so I did that for 14 years, did outreach ministry, and served in the ministry in the military. 12 years ago, I felt the calling to Torah, and I was like going, okay, how do I do that? And I was, of course, we've been taught that Sabbath and all the dietary commands were all done away with. We didn't have to do that anymore. But Sabbath was the big issue for most of us in the Christian church, and so Friday night came, and it was sunset, and I said, okay, God, it's Sabbath. Here I am. And I didn't know what to do or anything. I just acknowledged that was Sabbath, and that began my journey towards a Torah-pursuant life. So I was pastoring congregations, and so I had a congregation that I started working on to teach them about Torah. And when we went to Saturday Sabbath, everybody in my church left, except for my mom and one other lady. And so in the meantime, I began to study Torah, and I began studying under a Messianic rabbi. And from there, I began starting up Messianic congregations up until about 2.5 years ago. And I was really happy with Torah. I loved Torah. We did Torah services. We have a Torah scroll. All that stuff was beautiful. And when COVID hit, came to another transition in life, and where Hashem took everything away from me again. I lost my congregation, lost the building that I had. My wife divorced me. I lost my house. And so I kind of went into a period of some depression and reconsideration on things. So during my time as a Messianic Jew, I was learning more and more about, Torah, what it said, and the differences of who Jesus is. And I was separating and taking down all those different teachings that I had, which were not true. So here I am here today. The Lord brought me here to FOTW, and so I'm in the process of wanting to be in full Judaism. So my question is, I did bar mitzvah as a Messianic Jew. To come into full Judaism, do I need to do a conversion process like everybody else is doing here, or how would that work in my life at this point as I continue to pursue Torah?
Okay, it's a great question. So let's let's break down some of the things and maybe broaden it that in a way that it's also relevant to everybody here. So one of the things that I've noticed in many people's journeys, some of the common denominators that I've found is that many folks that begin in Christianity and leave the formal teachings of the church and Christianity, there's like a path that many people often take. And usually it goes something like this. Some people, you skip a step in between, whatever, but sometimes it looks like this. There's formal Christianity, you leave that and you go to Hebrew roots. And then Hebrew roots to Messianic Judaism, in some form or manifestation. And then from there to Judaism, traditional Judaism, ultimately and many wind up in Orthodox Judaism. Does that path sound familiar, whether it's your own journey or people that have been that have shared their journey with you? That's a very common trend about of how people make this journey along the way. And so the question that comes up a lot is with regard to conversion and the pursuit of conversion. And is that something that should be pursued, shouldn't be pursued, when to pursue, how to pursue, who to pursue with, all of these variations of questions. So from a Torah perspective, somebody is born into the obligation of Torah, of the fulfilling of the commandments, is if you have a Jewish mother, right, which means that they had a Jewish mother. It goes exclusively through the matrilineal, exclusively through the mother's line. That's, again, being born with the obligation. Or someone who has converted according to halacha, according to Jewish law, and has chosen that path in their own lives. Those are the two ways in which someone becomes a part of the Jewish nation, of being obligated in the commandments. There's no other way about it. Those are the two ways. So, also, that doesn't mean, though, wherever you're at, that you can't serve God. Because ultimately, and we were talking about, Rich and I were talking about this and his wife yesterday in the car ride over here, we were talking about that the ultimate kernel for all of us has to always be, I want to serve God. But also serve God not on my terms, serve God on God's terms. And serving God on God's terms may mean different things at different stages in our lives. So where you're at now, you got to serve God on God's terms where you're at now, but that doesn't mean that 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, that that's going to look exactly the same. One of the things that I think a lot of people fall trap into, and again, another common, I'll call it misconception, mistake that people make in their minds, is that when people get on the route, on the journey of pursuing Torah, they think the only way that I can serve God is as a Jew. Right? And that's the only way, and I want to just, that's my goal. The goal becomes becoming Jewish. And that's not necessarily, certainly not the only way of serving God. This person can serve God wherever you're at, whatever your background is, whatever your geographical location is. Person is always a servant of God. And there's a story that I love that really kind of illustrates this point. The story is, there were two rabbis that were put in a Russian prison. They were put in a Russian prison because they did the great crime of being Jewish and practicing Judaism publicly, right? And there was two rabbis, and this is a true story. They found themselves in this Russian prison, and in the small jail cell, in the small prison cell, there was a bucket, and the bucket was meant for going to the bathroom. Now, one of the rabbis who were in there was very distraught. Why was he very distraught? Because when you are in close proximity to feces, you're not allowed to, when you're in an unclean place, you're not allowed to pray. Because it's disrespectful to pray and to say God's name with, a bucket of poop over there. And so he became very distressed at the fact that he couldn't pray to God at that time. And his friend, the other rabbi that was in the cell with him, reminded him of something. And this is an important lesson for all of us to take to heart. He told him that the same God who wants you to serve him through prayer, the same God has said, in the context of halacha, of Jewish law, the same God has told you that you're not allowed to pray when there's filth. So in other words, normally, the normal course of serving God is through prayer, but when you're in a situation where you're near filth, the way of serving God is how? Not praying. It's by not praying. And so it put it in perspective for him, and he got so filled with joy that he could still serve God in this jail cell that he began to dance, and the two rabbis began to dance with each other and singing and dancing, and they became very excited. And all the other jailmates, all the other prison mates in all the other cells, they saw these two guys getting excited, and they got excited too. They started dancing and singing. There's a whole commotion in the jailhouse. It's jailhouse rock. Right? That's what it was. And one of the guards comes in, he flings the door open, he says, "What's the meaning of all this excitement?" And so one of the other jailmates said, "I don't know, but I know it has something to do with that bucket." And so the guard walked over and he grabbed the bucket, he took it out of the cell, and now they were left in a time where they can pray. Right? So wherever you're at whatever stage, wherever part of life you're at your journey, you serve God in a different way. But you got to serve God on his terms. In other words, if the rabbi said, "You know what? I know you're not supposed to pray. I know that's something that you're not supposed to do when there's filth next to you, but I want to pray anyway because I want to pray." Is that serving God or is that serving me? Right? That's serving me because I feel connected when I pray to God, because I feel good about myself when I pray to God. But meanwhile, in that situation, in the prison cell, does God want you to be praying? No. Serving God in the prison cell with the filth next to you is not praying, is not doing it. And this particular matter has ramifications all throughout Jewish law. And Jewish law and the Torah tells us that a Kohen, a priest, right, someone who served in the Mishkan or in the temple times, a priest wasn't allowed to serve if he had a blemish. In other words, if he had any sort of blemish that was irregular, he wasn't supposed to be in the service. He wasn't supposed to be doing it. There was a certain that's just the way that it was. That's what God commanded in the Torah. And so the way that priest serves God is how? By not being a part of the offerings. But if he said, "Well, I'm a priest and I was born a priest," and say, "Yeah, I have this blemish. I was born with whatever it is, but I want to serve. I want to make an offering. I want to offer a sacrifice." Is he serving God or is he serving himself? Serving himself, because he's saying, "I'm a priest and I want to serve God in the way." But the same Torah, the same God that says, offer a sacrifice if you are from the priestly family, offer the sacrifice. The same Torah tells us that if you have a blemish, whatever that is, not to serve. The way that you serve God, the way that you bring an offering, is by not bringing an offering. And so the context of serving God always has to be the nucleus of our motivations, right? That has to be the nucleus. So again, who's responsible for adhering to the mitzvahs, the commandments of the Torah? That's someone who was either born of a Jewish mother, from a Jewish mother, from a Jewish mother, or someone who has converted according to Jewish law. Okay, so if you think to yourself, "Well, I'm not of the Jewish faith, and I have no plans in converting to the Jewish faith, or for logistical reasons, practical reasons, I can't just uproot myself and go move to a Jewish community and have the resources there and properly convert," right? Then you should serve God as a non-Jewish person. Because again, at the end of the day, we're all chosen. We all have a mission. We all have circumstances in our life that frame our lives in the context in which we find ourselves. And we all have a way of serving God in that context. And God does not treasure one person's service more than the other person's service, because everyone serves God in the place in which you're at. So again, someone who is exploring what to do, what to pursue. Again, if you wanted to if the route that you wanted to go is to live a fully Torah observant life with keeping the Sabbath and keeping the mitzvahs and doing everything, then I'd suggest at some point moving to a Jewish community, and linking up with an Orthodox rabbi in that community or whatnot, and going through the lessons and learning about the commandments and pursuing that path. If in the meantime you are kind of exploring that journey, or what other options might be, here is a good place to be, because here there are so many people in different stages of the journey, and the goal is to learn more Torah. So again, if that inspires you one day to go move to a Jewish community where converting according to halachic standards, according to Jewish law standards, is something that you're able to do, then that's something to do at some point. But you can serve God now, or whatever step you are along the journey.
Perfect. Any other questions? Next. Okay.
Hi. I think you touched on it a little earlier when you were talking about the skepticism of the Jewish community when a convert comes in. And I was wondering if you could clarify for me some of the things I've heard, what's true, what isn't true, but that as a convert, a lot of us it won't apply to because we are already married, and I understand that remarriage is something, not remarriage, but married again in halakha. But if
you're saying getting married again in halacha is
right, once you convert, don't you get married by a rabbi again, even if you're married?
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And then the children who are under 12 come along in the conversion process, but is it correct that those children cannot marry a Jew? The convert cannot marry a Jew. Is that correct?
No, that's incorrect.
Okay.
Okay, so let's explore where some of the misunderstanding may
Yeah,
be.
and what are the differences between being a born Jew and being a converted Jew?
Sure, sounds good. All right, everyone here and understand the question? So here's where. So when I was saying before that there's sometimes an aversion to folks outside of the Jewish community, I wasn't talking specifically about converts. I was talking more about just someone who's not Jewish, who wants to learn more, who just shows up one Saturday morning, knock, knock, knock. Can I pray with you? Can I learn with you? Whatever that case may be. A lot of rabbis or congregations may be uncomfortable with that, again, for various reasons. Some are more open, some are less open, but it's out there. It's a reality. Whether it's good, bad, right, or wrong, that's a different discussion. But as far as does it happen, yes, it's a prevalent because again, it's mostly people just don't know, and they and also today with security and stuff, they want to kind of know who's coming before just opening the doors. Unfortunately, we live in a time where anti-Semitism is on the rise. I just heard yesterday or the day before in Florida, it was in Georgia, around the state, there was a bunch of neo-Nazis just holding Nazi flags in front of different synagogues around the state of Georgia. I mean, it's something that's been happening in Florida. It happened at the Chabad in Orlando. I mean, there's places all around the country that, and so I understand also, again, just from a purely safety perspective, that a lot of rabbis or congregations, with someone that they don't know, who's just kind of like, without introducing themselves and coming and just kind of showing up, would be a little bit, nervous or concerned, being what's going on these days. But a lot of it, even with the anti-Semitism aspect aside, a lot of it is just not understanding why the person wants to be here, not realizing that there are tons and tons, dozens and dozens, hundreds and hundreds, thousands and thousands of people in the United States who are coming from Christian backgrounds, who have left Christianity, left the beliefs of Christianity, and just want to learn Torah. They have no goals of missionizing people. They have no goals of doing anything but learning, of wanting to understand. And a lot of Jewish communities, for different reasons, just don't understand that. They just don't understand. And be that as it may, that is the reality on the ground. As far as conversion is concerned, so here's where it gets a little bit shaky. When it comes to conversion, so and Richard and I were talking about this in the car, and his wife on the way over here. We talked about a lot of things. We had a 3-hour drive. We had a whole lots of stuff. So one of the things that we were talking about was how in Judaism, up until 200 years ago, when you said the word Judaism, what you meant was what today we call Orthodox Judaism, right? That was Judaism, right? A Jew was somebody that kept the Sabbath, kept kosher. All the men put on tefillin and prayed three times a day. The women lit Shabbat candles and went to mikveh once a month. I mean, like they kept the law. What we called Judaism. There was no I'm this kind of Jew, this kind of Jew, right? It was Judaism was what we call today Orthodox Judaism. Then, in the early to mid 1800s, began in Germany, the Reform movement began. And one of the things that the original reformers wanted to do was specifically do things that would reject tradition. That was the motivation of the original reform movement. In fact, in Germany, again, this is all an outgrowth of the Enlightenment movement that had swept across Europe. So the Jewish Enlightenment movement had followed soon thereafter. And the idea of the Enlightenment, whether we're talking about the secular Enlightenment or as it manifests itself in the Jewish world, was to distance oneself from tradition. All those old world values and old world ideas and old world traditions were to be left behind, and we're going to create something new. And the original Reform movement, the original Reform ideology, specifically wanted to be more like the church, be more church-like. And the idea behind that was perhaps that was a better way to avoid anti-Semitism. It was a way of sort of bringing everyone on the Enlightenment path. And so the things that you'll notice especially in the original Reform movement, were meant to be church-like. So the reason that men and women, who always traditionally had sat separate in synagogue services, they put them together and called it family seating, just like in a church, right? It was to be more church-like. Churches have organs. Well, the original Reform said, oh, we're going to put an organ in also, right, to be more church-like. And all of the original trimmings of the Reform movement was specifically to move away from tradition. The Sabbath is not going to be the Sabbath, or certainly not observed in the same way that it always was. Kosher laws are null and void. Doesn't, sound familiar, right? So this is the original intent and the original messaging and packaging of Reform Judaism. It slowly made its way into the United States as Judaism and people started immigrating here. And in the early 1900s, when the Reform movement in Cincinnati had its first rabbinical ordination, right, they served treif. They served non-kosher food, right? They served shrimp. just again to show that we're not a part of tradition. Right? And then we were talking about the conservative movement and other movements that have come up in the mid to late 1900s, right, this past century, as different adaptations to scenarios on the ground. So in the 1950s, the conservative movement became very popular amongst people, especially people who had just come out of World War II and that whole era, the Depression era, World War II, where people, sort of had to, in their minds at least, had to bend the rules. If kosher wasn't available, you had to eat whatever you had to stay alive. And so conservative Judaism in the 1950s was very, very traditional. It was basically, in many circumstances, was basically Orthodox Judaism without a separate seating. Right? It wasn't even until 1973 that the conservative movement allowed for driving to synagogue, right? So it was in the 50s and 60s, it was very traditional. Since then, the conservative movement as a movement is slowly dwindling because its purpose or its need that it functioned for in post-war generation has kind of, not really in existence anymore. These were people that all grew up in Orthodox homes, traditional homes, and were sort of just looking for orthodoxy with a little bit of a bending and twisting in certain ways. Nowadays, conservative Judaism, Reform Judaism, for the most part, Reconstruction, all of the different what we call hyphenated Judaism. And again, we're not bashing anybody. I'm just giving this is the history of the development. The movements that call themselves like hyphenated Judaism, I'm a Reform Jew, conservative Jew, Reconstructionist Jew, or nudist Jew, whatever you got, right? Pick a hyphen, right? The idea was we are distancing ourselves from the tradition, and we're kind of coming up with our own ideas. And you see that very much pronounced in the modern day Reform movement and all of the movements, truthfully, for the most part, outside of Orthodoxy, that different values different from traditional Torah Judaism, have infiltrated and in many cases become the religion, right? So many of the movements outside of Orthodoxy have essentially become leftist ideology packaged in with Jewish symbols and Jewish themes. So it's the same, left ideology where we're at whatever the trend of society is, but packaged in a Jewish sort of flavor. And so Orthodoxy as a whole has rejected the ideology outside of Orthodoxy. And so how that manifests itself, and this is sometimes where unfortunately people are caught in between because the people are sincere, but the movements aren't necessarily. Movements have an agenda that they were created for and a perspective on things that are outside the scope of traditional Judaism. So a lot of people will find themselves in a tough situation. They'll go and they'll be interested in Judaism and they'll find the local Reform temple and they'll go under conversion classes in the Reform temple and they'll think that they are, will universally be accepted as a Jew and everything. And then they go to the Orthodox synagogue for the first time and they tell their journey over, and the Orthodox rabbi is put in the unfortunate and uncomfortable position of saying, I'm really sorry, but according to Jewish law, you're not Jewish. And again, the person was so sincere. They did it for all the right reasons and whatnot, but if they wanted to pursue that life, a traditional Jewish life, they have to learn the traditional Jewish wisdoms and in the traditional Jewish way. If you're learning from a rabbi that doesn't believe that God gave the Torah at Mount Sinai, that doesn't believe that kosher is relevant anymore, or that keeping the Sabbath as it traditionally kept is important, then that conversion is not going to be seen as valid amongst those that have kept traditional Judaism since the beginning, right? And that's where there's kind of this divide where you see the struggle is like, well, I converted reform and you don't accept me. Well, it's not a matter of me accepting you or you being accepted or whatnot. It's that the ideology in which you've been taught is not consistent with traditional Judaism. And again, that's not it's not your fault, or doesn't mean anything bad on you. You were sincere and you're trying to serve God, and it should be seen instead, rather than seen as a failed attempt or as something that's controversial or anything. It should be seen as everything in life should be seen as a step along my spiritual journey. And rather than saying it was a waste of time or that orthodoxy is so cloistered or whatever, rather say this as a step on my spiritual journey. Because, being Jewish is like being pregnant. You either are or you're not. There are steps, again, that people can take if they want to go in that direction and can incorporate slowly things into their lives and what have you. But again, all should be under the guidance of an Orthodox rabbi, because again, the teachings of the Torah, in the way that the Torah was given, are preserved in Orthodoxy. Yes.
Thank you for explaining that, but my question is more specific. So if a person converts to Orthodox Judaism, how are they viewed by the Orthodox Jewish community? Are they converts? Do they have different rules? Are they allowed different, like, could a convert to Orthodox Judaism marry someone in the shul who was born and raised in it?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
100%. 100%. Again, because of people's, there's a specific mitzvah, there's a specific commandment in the Torah to love the convert. So if someone doesn't love the convert, you got problems, man, because you got a specific commandment. At the same time, there's a reason that there is a commandment there, because people are people, and people's misgivings about different people and their journey, and because we naturally, again, there's a reason that we have to be told to judge other people favorably. Why? Because our nature sometimes is not to judge other people favorably. So I need a specific injunction to tell me, by the way, judge people favorably, because that's the way of the Torah. Right? And so with loving the convert, the same thing. Like, people have maybe naturally their own misgivings about whatever. That's their problem. That's not your problem. And so, no, someone who converts according to Orthodox Judaism can marry an Orthodox Jew tomorrow. I've been involved in many of those marriages myself. Right? So again, if people have had bad experiences, that's an unfortunate situation that was by an ununderstanding community. But that's an exception more than the rule. And it's certainly not something that's endorsed. Okay?
So earlier you were talking about the Beni Noach stuff, either living it out, living this way according to that, and then I may have misheard you say making that proclamation. What are the differences in that? What are the views of that? And
sure. So I don't even like to. I was talking about Richard. We talked about everything under the sun, man. I said that in my teachings, I don't in general I don't like labels of people, because we're people. We don't come with labels on, right? So why should I label? We're all in this journey together, pursuing a journey towards God, and all have different parts to play in this puzzle, but we're all part of the puzzle, right? And so I don't like to use even the term Noahide. I mean, everyone who is not Jewish is a Ben Noach, is a Noahide, is a son or daughter of Noah, right? Everyone alive today, if you believe in the Torah, is a child of Noah, right? So everyone by default, if you're not part of the Jewish nation, then you are a Ben Noah. You are that is who you are. So to call someone a Ben Noah, I prefer to use the term righteous Gentile, meaning someone who's not only a Ben Noah, who's someone who is a Noahide by birth, but someone who's living with that perspective, because everyone's a Ben Noah, right? I'm a Ben Noah. We're all Ben Noah, right? Everyone is, right? The Jewish people are a segment of humanity that is also Ben Avraham, right? But that's neither here nor there. So I like to use the term righteous Gentile. What righteous Gentile means is somebody who is aware of their role as a non-Jewish person and is living a life that is consistent with what God demands, what God commands of a non-Jewish person, which is to live according to the 7 laws of Noah, but also to incorporate those laws into practicality, as you guys are doing, meaning that you get together and you pray. This is all good stuff within the parameters of the 7 laws of Noah. Praying to God is not officially one of the 7 commandments, but if you are rejecting idols and you're believing in God, if you want to have a relationship with God, you got to pray to God. So it's an implied. Again, there's no you must pray once a day, you must pray 3 times a day. But if you want to have a relationship with God, you got to talk to God. You don't really have much relationship with a person that you never talk to. Yeah, I never talk to them, but we have a great relationship. You may want to rethink that, bud. So the idea is that someone who is a righteous Gentile means they know what the laws are for them as a person, and they are consciously observing those laws. They are treasuring the Torah. They are imbibing anything that they can of Torah into their life. And particularly, what's particularly useful area of Torah that everyone can study and gain from are things like Musar, right? Things like character development that are written by our sages that talk about how to deal with anger and how to deal with laziness, and Hasidic teachings as well, which talk about our relationship with God and the value of every person and what our role is in this world. And so, if a person wants to make a proclamation and that's something you can do, and you have the guidance of a rabbi to do that. That's fine. That's wonderful. But it's not necessarily. It's more for you to say, like I'm making it official, right? Well, I'm like signing the paper that I'm putting my. But it's not required. A person can just live a life as a not Jewish person, as a righteous Gentile, living according to the laws of Noah, and being a very strong servant of God in that way.
How you doing, Rabbi? I had a question as far as so when I read the Torah, all 613 laws that a Jewish person is responsible to keep, they're all in the Torah, right? And my question is, because me and my wife have taken the initiative to start to take this class to start to try to become Jewish. Is there any one of those laws that you struggle with that you would say, in your opinion, is hard to do?
For me personally? Yes, sir. I don't know that there's one in particular. I mean, the Torah, I think that I would probably fall, it wouldn't be an action-based one. The action-based ones are not so difficult. The harder ones are the ones that are probably harder for all of us. And that's the character development stuff. When the Torah tells us that our character, we're not supposed to be lazy, or we're not supposed to hold grudges and be angry at people. And the character development stuff is much more embedded in us, right? Our perspective things. So I would say more in that line. We all have areas that we kind of struggle with character-wise, some more than others, and some it's more ingrained than others. But I would say probably more in that regard, stuff that happens internally, the mindset or the feelings that we're supposed to have. But actions-wise, it's I don't find any one particular one that I might like struggle with per se. Certainly not at this point, because one of the things about, I mean, like, it's not easy to keep kosher, especially if you're not in a place where there's a whole lot available, right? It's not easy thing to do. Cleaning out your whole house on Passover of all your chametz and, vacuuming under like we're like vacuuming the house and my like babies are eating Cheerios behind me, dropping crumbs over the house. So I mean, that logistically and practically that can be very hard in that sense. There are a lot of things that, when it comes to logistics and practicality, building a sukkah in 95,000 degree Florida heat is not, I can't say that's my easiest, and sitting in the sukkah and living in the sukkah for like those 8 days is like, that's more difficult, again, but that has more to do. I'm sure someone who's living in a more tempered environment, it's not as big a deal. But again, we're all based on our own situations are going to have things that we struggle with more. But the goal of somebody who is not Jewish should never be, I want to be Jewish. That's not the exclusive goal. The exclusive goal that everyone in humanity should have is, I want to be a servant of God. I want to grow in Torah. But that doesn't necessarily mean I want to be a Jew, right? And wherever you're at on that journey, a person should be acknowledged and admired for just being on the journey. Because that's already better than most people in our society. They're just kind of like running through the hamster wheel of life and then wake up one day and like, what was all this about? That's, yes.
So, Rabbi, this leads me to another question.
Sure.
For primarily the people here and within our community, of course, many of them are coming, of course, from different systems of religions and whatnot. And everybody's coming to the Awakening of Torah. A good portion of people here came from the Messianic movement, of course.
Yes.
What will you say? And of course, we're really wanting to come under your wings and be able to operate and work together. What will be appropriate, if I may ask, for people who have for years now been keeping Sabbath? Again, not necessarily in a halachic way, but when the festivals come, what as a community, what will be acceptable for you, for us to be able to do that won't keep us, won't make us feel excluded, but rather included somewhat, and especially in the journey that we're all heading to, obviously, in serving God. But for a good majority, or even for those who want to remain righteous Gentile, even for that, demographic right there, what does that look like from here on out? Like, when Sabbath comes, when the feasts come, because, I don't know if you noticed that typically where the Jewish feasts fall, you also have the Christian feast. So,
I wonder why.
Yeah, right, right. I mean, right around that area. So, for many of us in here, it's like, okay, well, we walked away from that, but we're afraid to step into this now, which kind of leaves us out in the middle of an island.
Yep.
And I think this is what, and maybe I may be speaking for a lot of us in here, this is kind of like where they feel, like we feel excluded. We're not accepted, where we left, but we're not necessarily welcome where, what the people that we're looking up to, our teachers, who are teaching the great things and how to purify the world through mitzvot and all these different things and the blessing that comes with that. Yeah. What again, the idea is, again, not to make it difficult, but where is the reconciling there, and what could we do?
So I think the question, if I'm understanding correctly, is while we're in this sort of like quasi middle zone, having left Christianity but not converted according to Jewish law, either yet or ever, right? Whatever. But we're kind of like in this middle zone, right? So again, first of all, everything that you do is treasured by God. Let's everything that's in line with what God instructed is all treasured by God. So whether that is someone who's not Jewish or someone who is of the Jewish faith, if you're doing what God said for you specifically at this point in your life, God treasures that. Secondly, what I would say is that it's okay to pursue the themes of the feasts without the halachic observance of the feast. And let me explain what that means. So let's say Passover is coming up. So Passover is something that a lot of people can relate to. A lot of people even maybe grew up and learned it in a different context, especially a lot of you are coming out of Messianic Judaism, right? You've learned it in a different sort of way. So it would be a good idea to learn sort of the real meanings of Passover and imbibe during those 7 days, or 8 days rather, of what the theme of having a consciousness of what Passover is about. So for example, what is the real meaning, the essence of what Passover is about? Is about being freed from slavery, right? That's what we're celebrating. That's what we're commemorating. And in a Jewish context, you would do that through having a seder and recounting each step along the way. The core of slavery, though, and of leaving slavery, is leaving our inner Egypt. And this is something in the Jewish world and the not Jewish world that we need to be aware of. Passover is certainly not only about commemorating an event that happened 3,300 years ago, where the Israelites are leaving geographical Egypt and going into the geographical promised land. This is a spiritual practice, a spiritual endeavor that is in the air during the holiday of Passover that is free for the taking. In other words, whatever has been holding you back in your life, physical, emotional, intellectual, or spiritual, anything that has been enslaving you, that has been limiting you, that has been holding you back, enslaving you, these are the days that we are empowered to leave that enslavement, to free ourselves from that limitation. One of my favorite stories is when I was in summer camp. So they used to have in my area, they had a place called the Swap Shop. And the Swap Shop, you may remember, if you grew up in Hallandale, the Swap Shop used to have, haven't had a long time, used to have free circus every day. Wow, that was like the coolest thing, right? So every day free circus. And so I was in camp, and one of the days they took the camp to the circus. And it was so cool because in the camp, we got the backstage tour, and we got to go behind the curtain after the show and see what was going on behind there. And what you'd notice is that there's these large elephants that are part of the show, but they're chained to the podium, or they're chained to like the ring area with this little itty bitty cord, this little itty bitty chain. And you're looking at this giant elephant that's several tons, right, that could squash any of us, being fastened to the pole with this itty-bitty little cord, itty-bitty little chain. And so somebody asked the ringmaster, how is it that this little itty-bitty chain is holding the elephant in place? The elephant could easily, you don't have to be an animal expert to know that this elephant could very easily just, he says, that the chains are put there, a little bitty chain is put there when the elephant is a baby elephant. And when the elephant is a baby elephant, it really can't break the chain. And so the elephant has been conditioned that even when it gets to be a big elephant, this little itty bitty chain is still restricting it. Even though it could just make one shove and shatter the chain, the elephant is stuck there because of how it grew up. It grew up always being told, can't break the chain. Trying to break the chain when I was little, can't break that chain. How many of us in our lives live lives like that, where we've lived a certain way, had a certain mentality since we're growing up, either that's been told to us by society or that we concluded on our own based on our life experiences, that are holding us back, that are chaining us? You'll never be successful. You'll never find love. You'll never break that addiction. Whatever, pick your thing. Because when you were young or in a different stage in your life, maybe you really couldn't. Maybe it was really difficult. Or maybe someone projected that on you and told you, you'll never be successful. You'll never make a lot of money. You'll never find love. You'll never break that addiction. You'll never triumph over your depression. Whatever it was, whatever it is. And we're being held by this little cord that we could very easily break now. But we're enslaved to it. We're chained to it. Passover is the time where we break free from all our enslavements. And so that message, when Passover comes, I hope that everyone in this room, when you're studying together, that you will take the theme of Passover and learn to yourself about these breaking free of all of these things that hold us back, these enslavements, the inner Egypt. In fact, the word Egypt in Hebrew, Mitzrayim, comes from the same word as Meitzarim, limitations. So being in Egypt means being in your limitations. And being free from Egypt means breaking your limitations. That's the idea. So you don't need, if you're not of the Jewish faith, you don't need the fanfare and the Seder and whatever. It's but the core, the message, the soul of the holiday is still there and can still be tapped into. And so you should mark that it's Passover and that it's a special day. And that it has a certain theme, a certain energy to it. And likewise with each of the Jewish holidays. It's again, to not observe it in the ways that the Jews do, not to keep the halachic parameters, not to keep the legal standards and rituals that are done, but to take the soul of what the holiday is about and invest yourself in study, invest yourself in prayer, invest yourself in carrying that message. When you're praying over Pesach, when you're praying over Passover, tell yourself, God, please help me break my limitations. And here's my specific limitations that I'm struggling with. Help me break it. When you're studying, study those limitations. Study how to break it. That's the theme of Passover. That's how you still feel Passover in the air as a not Jewish person, as a righteous Gentile. And so that the same kind of theme can be marked in the holidays, and even, and the Sabbath. The Sabbath, if you are not of the Jewish faith, you should not be observing the Sabbath like the Jews. In other words, not prohibiting yourself from the restrictions that are not allowed to be done on the Sabbath. The Jewish people are called, they're a distinguished people, and they have to remain distinguished, right? And so that's what the Jewish people do it like that. Like that's at the same time to get together as a community and to study together and to pray together and to eat together, right? In commemoration of the day that God rested and to commemorate the idea that there's a God in this world and that God has a special, that God's presence is designated for one day, to tap into that, to try and imbibe that, that's something for all of humanity. To have it, but don't fall into the trap where you say, I have to feel, or I want to feel, or I want to do more things that are commanded to the Jewish community with no intention of converting and whatever. I serve God where you're at. Serve God where you're at. But the theme, the soul, the nucleus of all of the days, especially the holidays, can always be enjoyed and symbolized. When the Hanukkah comes, right, and the menorah is lit, so fine, you don't have the commandment to light the menorah, but the concept of light triumphing over darkness, the light triumphing over the darkness in your own life, right? The theme is there. The theme is for you, it's for me, it's for everyone. That's how we as a human family are in sync with God's Torah, but practically imbibe and observe it in different ways.
That's beautiful, actually, because at least you're still somewhat connecting. You're not like in the middle. Okay, Passover comes, well, we're just going to sit around and do nothing, because you see what I mean?
Right.
So this is kind of, I appreciate that perspective where, yeah, we can take the aspect of the goodness of the holiday, and yes, not removing the halachic stipulations that come with the holiday specifically.
Right.
So
the actions are commanded to the Jews, But the soul, the nucleus, the theme, the energy of the day is something that everyone can tap into in their own way.
Any other questions?
So I'm with the humility of saying not doing is serving God. The jail cell, not praying, because that idea is so foreign to me, to my understanding. But I see that. I understand. So and our journey in Messianic is still very new, because it's not too long ago that we came out of church. So I believed it. So I want to understand, but I know obviously we know we weren't keeping Sabbath the way it's meant to be kept, and doing Passover and all those things the way it's meant to be kept. So where we're at is, I guess I feels like it would be wrong for us to eat leaven during Passover time, because we were in the habit for the last 2 years to not have it. You know what I mean? So would you help me to understand why would I be serving God by not doing that command? I understand it's because I'm not Jewish. I'm not. It's not for the Gentile nation. But I guess I don't want to sound without trying to sound combative. But like, why is it wrong to want to do it the halakhic way without being Jewish?
Okay,
if you could please.
That's a fair question.
Okay.
So the question, if I understand it correctly, is why? What would stop me? What's wrong with doing some of the commandments without being an Orthodox Jew, without converting to Judaism? So, because again, Judaism is open to all. In other words, that it's not like we don't accept converts. We welcome. We're supposed to, right? Right. But no, there are plenty of places that a person can go where there are very helpful and caring rabbinic courts, Beit Din, that you would work with, that are helpful and caring. But again, if you want to follow, if that's the path you want to follow, then you gotta join that path. Right? Because again, God, one of the things that we talked about yesterday with Richard, we talked about, oh my gosh, we packed more than that 3 hours than it's been speak with most people. So here's kind of the idea behind it. It's like two people that go to the doctor, right? And the doctor assesses you, takes your blood test, he takes all the tests that doctors, when they poke and prod you, and they X-rays and pick your thing. And tells one person, he says, you have a sensitivity to gluten. You have a sensitivity to whatever. Pick your trans fats. I don't know, whatever. You have sensitivity in these areas. You have allergies. You shouldn't eat X, Y, and Z thing, right? That's something you shouldn't eat. But the person who the other guy said, oh, doctor, you're saying that person shouldn't eat this and shouldn't do that, and that they said no, that's for them. That's their prescription based on their makeup and but not for you. That has nothing to do with you. You can eat whatever it's not inherent about the gluten that is the issue. It's that when gluten responds to when gluten's going to go into you, it's going to have a negative result. And so there is a prescription that God has given to the Jewish people, and there's a prescription that God has given to non-Jewish people. And so, but if the non-Jewish person is saying, I want to use the prescription of the Jews, it's like someone can take a prescription, a medicine that is meant for somebody else. It's not meant for you. It's not your prescription. You want that prescription, so you're welcome to go pursue that. You're welcome to go, but don't, as long as that's not your prescription. It's not again on Passover. If you want, there's nothing per se wrong with having matzah on Passover to commemorate that it's Passover, but have a sandwich also next to it. In other words, so you shouldn't think that I'm commanded to eat matzah. You know what I'm saying? Like, have leavened. Right? Because it's not a commandment. You can do it again. You're eating the matzah as a commemoration, as something maybe that's is reminding you that it's Passover, and that's the theme of the day, and maybe that helps create the atmosphere. But eat leavened also if you're not of the Jewish faith, because again, you shouldn't perceive it as this is a commandment or a part of my prescription in life. It's doing. I'm commemorating. I'm symbolizing. I'm getting the right mindset, or what have you, but it shouldn't be taken on as like I'm fulfilling my obligation or I'm doing something that would not serving. You're not serving God as a non-Jew by eating matzah. You are serving God as a Jew by eating matzah, but that doesn't mean that a non-Jew is not serving God. It's just that's not part of their prescription in the service of God. So when you eat unleavened bread on Passover, you're a human that's eating unleavened bread. The same way that when I eat unleavened bread today, I'm not serving God. If I eat a piece of matzah today, I'm not serving God. I'm just eating a piece of unleavened bread. So if you're not Jewish and you're eating unleavened bread on Passover, you're just a person eating unleavened bread. Same thing like me eating unleavened bread today. It's just a person eating unleavened bread. Again, the idea is don't take it on as an obligation if it's not an obligation. If it's not part of your prescription, then leave that to the people that's their prescription. If my doctor gives me a whole exercise regimen and diet and schedule that I need to keep because that's my prescription physically, and I need that in order to preserve my health, well, then that doesn't mean that's for you. You don't need to maintain this particular exercise regimen and this particular diet, and that's not your prescription. Same thing in the spiritual realm. Our spiritual doctor in heaven has prescribed a prescription for the Jewish people and a prescription for the non-Jewish people. And that's one of the reasons, by the way, that our tradition teaches that at Mount Sinai, when God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, that he also repeated the 7 laws of Noah. That's what our tradition teaches. Because at Sinai was a new establishment of relationship between God and humanity. In other words, I as a Jew do not circumcise my sons because Abraham did it. I do it because the Torah that was given at Sinai commands me to do it. It's not as a tradition that it's because at Sinai that relationship I was obligated to do it. And same thing with someone who's not of the Jewish faith, that at Sinai there was a renewed connection, a renewed relationship between God and humanity to keep the 7 laws of Noah. In fact, the Rambam, the famed medieval sage Maimonides, says that if somebody is naturally just a nice person, they're naturally a good-hearted person, moral person, they're not murdering people, they're not stealing from people, they believe in God, but they just do it because that's their nature, they're considered one of the wise among the nations. But the small difference, if you do it, if you're doing those things, not only because it's your nature, but because God instructed that at Mount Sinai, right, that this is a commandment from God, you're integrating God into the picture, I'm doing this for God, that makes you one of the pious of the nations. And so there's a difference between being one of the wise of the nations and one of the pious of the nations. A wise person just means a good moral person that believes in God and does the right thing. To take it to the next step, I'm doing this because this is what God has instructed me through Moses at Sinai.
Rabbi, would it, if I may, would
Sure.
it be fair to say that also part of this could be also the aspect of mischaracterizing a nation? In other words, so doing the mitzvot, and I'm talking about to the highest level of halachic level, people are going to, say that you are Jewish, obviously. But then you might find yourself on that same week, they may see you eating in a restaurant here locally, eating foods that are not necessarily halachically allowed. So what ends up happening is now you're mischaracterizing the nation. You see what I mean? So it's one of those things like you all in or you're not. Because what happens is if you're doing bits and pieces, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're doing bits and pieces, the outside world is looking at you as, and again, I kind of talked to you about this, well, for the Gentile, everybody is a Jew if you're keeping Sabbath, whatever case may be, but in this case, if they see you doing it the way an actual Jew does it, it's you're letting the world know I represent this nation. So, and in the environment that we're in right now, and the lifestyle that you lead, all of it has to represent the nation to its truthfulness. You see what I mean? Not just partial here, partial there, a little bit here, a little bit there, and then mischaracterizing in other areas. Would that be fair? In a part, because it's mischaracterized. You know?
Right. That's the icing on the cake.
Right.
Yeah. We want to be concerned. We want to be aware of how we're representing and
Right.
you know, we don't want to mischaracterize ourselves and suggest that we are something that we're not. But ultimately, the nucleus of all of our service has to be, how can I serve God where I'm at right now? Along the way. Again, that doesn't mean the journey is going to look the same 5-10 years from now. I might be in a different place, right? Might look different. But where I'm at now, I need to serve God on God's terms, not on my terms, not what I want to do or what makes me feel good. We got to go by the prescription.
Excellent. Dave, you had a question? Oh, you got your mic. Okay.
So I got a twofold question. Obviously, we came out of Christianity, and our extended family is still in the Christian system. And the question is basically, for example, my parents lived good moral lives. They were married for over 60 years together. They raised children to the best of their ability, and I think that most of us are on a good path. But in the end of days, how does Hashem view people that have lived good moral lives, but they've been caught in idolatry and didn't realize it? How would that?
Sure.
What does that look like?
So God judges everybody based on their circumstances. There's no cookie cutter way to judge. I mean, obviously we have the things that we're supposed to do and things we're not supposed to do, but each person and each person's situation, given the nature and the nurture that they were given, right? Whatever your genetics are and whatever your environment that you grew up in, that's all going to play a role in how likely or unlikely it is that you sort of find the truth and find God. And God judges each person based on their situation. So again, I like to, especially when it comes to Christianity, which from a halachic perspective, for a non-Jew to believe in God, but also that there is this other entity called JC, that, you know, kind of links them or whatever. For a non-Jew, this may not be something that is entirely forbidden. In other words, it's not ideal, but it may be something that would still be consistent with believing in God for a non-Jewish person. Again, it's not the ideal, and if a person can move somebody away from that, all the better. But as someone who is believing in a Trinity, it's called shituf. And it's basically the same mistake that we talked about earlier with what led the people originally into idolatry. Remember, we said at the very beginning of the talk today that the people believed in God, but they also believed that God sort of gave a certain degree of influence to the Son, right? And so I'm going to pray to the Son, right? S-U-N, rather than praying directly to God. But I really mean God, but I'm conveying that through the S-U-N. And I think a lot of folks in the Christian world have made the same sort of viewpoint with the S-O-N, right? They mean God. And if you were to ask them, who do you believe in? They say, I believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God who gave the Torah to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai. Okay. And like, if you ask, who do you mean when you say God? They say God, right? And then you ask a Christian, so what role does JC have? A lot of people, again, I'm not talking about what the doctrines themselves say, and there's many different doctrines, as you all well know, within the Christian world, that Catholics believe in one way, and Greek Orthodox believe in one way, and Baptists, and there's a whole different ways that people perceive the role of JC. There's some that are even non-Trinitarian. The Mormons are non-Trinitarian. J Witnesses are non-Trinitarian. So there's different ways that people view JC. But when push comes to shove, and you ask people on an individual level, not what the doctrine says, but what individually, what people are most people actually don't believe that JC is divine. I was sharing with Richard yesterday that there was a study conducted within the last 2 years amongst evangelicals. So I mean, like, we want to talk about the hardcore, right? Amongst evangelicals, asking them, what do you believe in the divinity of JC, or that JC is more like a teacher or a guide, an example of how to live? Most people said that they don't believe in him as a God, that there's God, and then he's sort of, when push comes to shove, most people don't even understand the Trinity, right? It's like Tertullian said, I believe it because it doesn't make any sense, right? But the idea is that most people's innate concept of God is that they believe in God. They believe that there's something higher. When they say, in God we trust, as an American, they believe that there's a God, right? An invisible creator of the universe who, right, that oversees us all, that wants righteousness, that all these things. And they're not exactly sure where JC fits in the picture. That's just kind of like the veil that has been presented to them that they've grown up with. And I believe that most people are in that similar category. So again, is that the ideal? No. But is it something that would sort of exclude them from being judged favorably? The answer is also no. Like we should judge everybody as favorably as possible and help them along the way as much as we can.
That's even a Mishnah concept. Judge
What?
Judge
Right, judge everyone favorably.
Judge everyone favorably.
That, again, we shouldn't say that somebody is an idolater, right? Idolatry, to really worship an idol, you got to know what you're doing. You got to know what you're actually believing in. If you're just sort of like loosely believing in, yeah, there's God, and he he had a son, and like if it's nebulous in your head, it's not the same type of thing as like, this is, I believe in some voodoo power over there. This is like, I believe in God. I just have misunderstanding or misrepresented through my upbringing and surroundings, whatever, of how to understand that. So rather than saying that they're idolaters, say that they are on a different rung in the spiritual journey.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And my second...
Not that we shouldn't pull that. If we have the opportunity to bring more light and more understanding, all the better. But for a non-Jewish person, it would be more to everyone's benefit to encourage a belief in God rather than say, you bad idolater, you're damned to hell for worshiping idols. Yeah.
So along with that, then, at the end of days, when everybody's revivified, and that would include all of the babies that have never had an opportunity to grow up, to even make a choice.
Yeah.
Hashem will certainly allow them that opportunity to make that decision at that time, probably.
Hashem will judge everyone according to their particular circumstances. Yeah.
So in the second part of my question then is the righteous Gentile who is not in the Jewish covenant. There's two different ways. In the end of days again, how does Hashem view the righteous Gentile versus the Jewish person who is in covenant in relation to the end of days?
The question that God asks every individual is, did you do your mission? Or did you pursue your mission? Which for a non-Jewish person means, did you pursue a life of righteousness, abiding by the 7 laws of Noah, living a godly life, pursuing that to the best of your ability, spreading that word as much as you can, right? If you are doing those things, God says, welcome to the next world, right? If you're of the Jewish faith, the question's going to be, did you do what you were charged to do, that you were born into and or chose to do? How well did you pursue that? Were you living according to the mitzvahs? Were you observing the way that you're supposed to observe? Were you on the path? And that's the question that God asks every human being. Were you on the path, on the mission that I charged you with? The prescription that I gave you, how well did you fulfill it? Yeah.
So lots of prayer for understanding this year, because sometimes it's and you can tell by the emotions and the voices that it's a lot. But you mentioned earlier that the Jewish people, they see all these people coming and they don't understand. So there's lack of understanding on that side too. And obviously, I'm sure the feeling is that, these people have just thrown rocks at us for centuries, and now all of a sudden, all this interest, I don't understand. I lack understanding. And you can tell me if it when you went to yeshiva, I mean, do they have classes on dealing with Ben Noach and righteous Gentiles, and because it really hasn't. And you say there's thousands of these people that are now seeking.
You know that, yeah.
Yeah, and we're hearing that more and more. So with that, is it on the radar of the rabbis that there seems to be something happening, and it's building and it's growing, and we need to deal with this, and we need to educate how we deal with this and how we communicate with people, and do you see a movement moving forward? Because, I think the emotion comes from, I finally saw this and I came to monotheism, but now I feel like I've been dropped on my head because there's really nothing here for me unless I take that next step. And in my situation...
What does that mean? I just want to clarify. What does it mean that you say that there's nothing there for you? I want to understand what that means for you.
We've come from a place where we... probably as a rebellious people, we did what we wanted, and now we got to pump the brakes because, my biggest thing was I came to the realization and grieved for my disrespect for you and what I was doing. So I had to pump the brakes. I want to stay in my lane because after a whole lifetime and 25 years of that, I'm not ready to jump from the frying pan to the fire. I want to gain more understanding before I move forward from what I've already come to the knowledge of. Looked like you had a question.
No, I was wondering what you said. 20 or 25 years of disrespecting me or something like that.
As a messianic, as I move forward into that, and I made that my own in my own way, and realizing that I was taking something sacred away from you as a people. So that was but when I see all of this happening, I don't know, was it Davy Crockett, I guess, he said, are you for me, against me? I mean, you as a people, you see all these people in their heart want to follow.
Yes.
I would rather have you on my side than against me.
Oh, sure.
So what do you see going forward
in the Jewish world?
To start to accommodate this overwhelming time of change, where people are. We live in a scary world right now, and people are coming to the knowledge of one God and moving out of idolatry, and are desperate for information, yet it doesn't all seem to be out there right now. So, is it on the radar that we need to, in Torah Judaism or Orthodox Judaism as a whole, that we need to start addressing this, or is it just fear of the unknown?
So let me share with you a little bit about my story, okay? And that'll kind of help frame what brought me to the work that I'm doing, and I can answer your question, I think, in that angle. So I was born Jewish, grew up in a Jewish household, but a very secular household, not a religiously observant home. And when I was 15 years old, beginning high school, and kind of thinking, what do I want to be when I grow up? High school is kind of when it hit me of like, better start kind of thinking about that, And so I always liked Judaism and spirituality. I always liked people. I always liked learning, and I always liked teaching. So you put those ingredients in the pot and you stir it up, poof, Rabbi is like, wow, that's like perfect, right? That's like the perfect environment. And so I chose it then, and I haven't looked back since. And as far as working with folks outside of the Jewish world, well, growing up in that environment, I had a lot of really good friends that were not Jewish, right? I had friends that were in Catholic school, right? Good guys, good people, good families. I love them. I'm still very friendly with them today. Still hang out. We still, But at that time, when I was 15, I wondered, I know we're not a proselytizing religion, but I know that it can't just be that God's writing off most of humanity and saying, the Jews are it, and that everyone else is like, unimportant. So there's got to be something that God commands and God wants of the non-Jewish world. And so that made me pursue the idea of learning about what God wants for the non-Jews, so that I could be an example, not in a preachy sort of way of like, oh, you're not supposed to do this and blah, 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 but it was more like, I want to help you along the way. I want you to do what God wants from you, because I want you to be in the good graces of God. Similar to how you're viewing your family. Like, you're going to Catholic school, and if you think, okay, well, if Judaism is the right way and Torah is the right way, well, where does this leave these guys? These are good people. And so in learning and researching already from 15 years old, I was very intrigued by the newly developing outreach or people that were coming from the non-Jewish world in finding Torah. And there wasn't a lot of resources at the time. There were a handful of books out. There was a book called Finding the God of Noah about a pastor in Tennessee who had gone that journey. There were just a few and far between, some books of the Noahide laws and going through all the details of them. But, information is before also the widespread availability of the internet. So it wasn't like there were groups and things forming and whatever. It was like, okay, you got to take what you have. And so as a very zealous teenager, so I think I told you earlier, I would like write pamphlets about the 7 laws and going through details about how to fulfill each one of them based on what I was reading and understanding. And I found some of them recently, and I look back at my 16-year-old writing, and I'm like, so embarrassed. But that's where I was at the time. And I remember writing a whole proclamation or declaration of people wanting to observe the 7 laws of Noah, explaining what they were, the idea of living a righteous life. And I was in public school at the time. So I'd get my teachers to sign it and other students to sign it. We're going to live a righteous life. And this is my 16-year-old, shtick. But it came from a good place. And over the years, I've always held on dearly to the assisting people in their mission, in their journey, that are coming out, that are just want to serve God. You could be a Christian also, right? It doesn't matter. Muslim, everyone's welcome. You want to learn Torah, I want to help you. The Torah that is relevant for your life. And so along the way, while I was in yeshiva, towards the end of my yeshiva days, I learned in New Jersey. I was somebody from a representative from noahide.org, which was one of the websites that were available at the time. They asked me if I would write a course. Again, I was only 23 or something at the time. So again, now that I look back at it, I'm like, I could have done so much better. But it was something that always stayed a part of me. Always something valuable to me. And going down a few years ago, 5.5 years ago, is when I finally said, with the power of the internet, there's a lot more impact that I can be having that I'm not having. And there's a lot more that I can do to help people that are in the Philippines and in Botswana and in India and in Nebraska and wherever, all around the world, people that are learning, wanting Torah and have no Jewish resource local to them and no rabbi that understands them and no one that's assisting them. I want to be that resource. I want to help those people. I want to be involved in the spiritual journey in the lives of these people. And so I started the ARC program. And it was meant, and it holds still true to the word that it's meant. So ark in Hebrew, right, is teva, which not only means ark, it also means word. And the idea is that in the same way that Noah and his family were saved and protected from the tumultuous journey of life by going into their ark, so too, when we go into the Word of God, we are saved and protected from the chaos that is this world, right? And the ark was that mission. And so now I gave you guys the that's sort of like the abridged version, and I said now we're making it into something even greater, the American Faith Coalition, which the ARC is a service that's provided by the American Faith Coalition, and the goal is now to, when available, when we're able to actually establish physical places where people can get together if they're living in a certain area as that develops. The more people that we reach, the more people can sort of meet themselves in a certain area, and then we can sort of found a place of worship, a place of meeting, a place of friendship. And so to answer your question now, your question was, do I see in the Jewish world a sort of openness, welcoming, an idea? Some, but it's more the exception than the rule, unfortunately. Because wherever we're at in life, whether we're religious, whether we're not religious, whether we're secular, whoever, everyone lives by nature, by rote. Right? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. This is what I've always done. This is what I'm trained to do. So rabbis tend to stick with their communities and develop their communities. Nothing wrong with that. That's always the traditional role that the rabbi had. You develop your community. Right, you provide, and thinking outside of your community is just not on the radar. Nothing personal to anyone else, but even in the Jewish world, like you don't work on bringing people that are, in a different town, making them more connected with their Torah, with their Jewishness. You think of your community, how I can improve it in my community. That's the worldview that we naturally have. That's just the way that it goes. But because of my background. And because of my experiences, and remember we talked about purpose, right? So it's talents, passions, experiences, network of people, and challenges that I think I've put them together to sort of, this is my mission. This is my purpose. It's a role that's not being fulfilled by very many people. There are other people out there, and I wish them well, and I only encourage everybody to be a part of them. I never am discouraging anyone from learning from, just learn, But this is something that I really feel very passionate about, very strong about, and if I was given the gift of being able to teach and communicate clearly by God, I definitely want to use it for this particular purpose.
I just want see if you could clarify for me a little bit. So you talk about the ark and how when we come to the Word of God that we are able to learn together, and by coming to the Word of God we actually find protection. And I think that's really the drive of all of us, is that we grew up with obviously the Christian Bible, and we've dropped the last half off, which you know the story. But
the sequel's never as good as the original. Let's be real,
yeah. But coming to the Tanakh, coming to the Jewish scripture, but really, our love for God and our love for righteousness has always stemmed from the Jewish scripture. Even in Christianity, it was like the Old Testament is foundation. Now, did we live by it? No, not really. I mean, morally, we tried. So we talk about, and this is where I need the clarification and how maybe you can help me understand this a little better. But we talk about Noahide laws, and apart from the Jewish scripture, there has been no God who has revealed himself to give humanity moral good things to do or not to do. And so, you go to a community, not community, but a society that does not have any kind of, say, scripture. You know, they may live a life of, I will use grotesque, you know, bestiality. You know, they have no moral standards, and I think part of the hard thing for me to understand is if we don't have Torah, we don't have any guide. And the thing that I don't understand is, you know, there's meaning and purpose to life. It's not about the not doing of things, but it's about the doing of things. And I know, you know, what is it? The six laws of the no hide are negative commandments.
Yes.
And then the seventh one is establish
Courts of law.
courts of law and right ruling within your gates. But how do we establish it if we don't have a foundation or we don't have Torah to guide us? Because, I mean, really, that's kind of more of the drive is like having, we wouldn't know what immorality is unless Torah tells us. We wouldn't, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
It defines it, you know, man not with a man, woman not with woman, blah, 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 you know, having not incestual relationships, so on and so forth.
Yes.
So, like a lot of us, you know, we desire to live moral lives and we want to do the things. And so we look to the Torah and we see that Hashem has said, you know, do this and do this and do this. So how far, I know the halakhic stuff, but even within, you know, let's say Leviticus chapter 20, where it gives all, I mean, this is part of the Torah given at Mount Sinai.
Yeah.
I guess I struggle with is, the thing that I struggle with is in the Noahide idea is, because Leviticus 20 was given at Mount Sinai, how can we fulfill Leviticus 20 and yet be prohibited from doing it because it was the law given to the Jews at Mount Sinai? So you understand what I'm saying?
So yeah, good question.
Yeah.
The same Torah contains various instructions for different people. And when I say the Torah, I'm not talking necessarily in the strictures of the 5 books of Moses. When I say the word Torah, I mean the collective body of Torah interpretation as well. Because one of the foundations of our faith that has preserved it so clearly is that we have a written law, and we also have an oral accompanying tradition with it. So in other words, when the Torah gives a nebulous commandment, which, little secret, they're all really nebulous, right? They're all nebulous in the sense that you can't understand what the root of it is, what the parameters of it are without the oral tradition, right? When the Torah says don't murder, well, does that include abortion? Right? Doesn't say it clearly. Well, you need an oral tradition to tell you what that includes. Does that include euthanasia or mercy killing? Right? Because our society would say, well, that's not immoral. That's moral, right? You're ending someone's suffering, and that's something good. Well, how do I know? Well, unless I have an oral tradition that sort of tells us what does murder mean, or what does anything mean. From the simplest thing to the most complex, there are parameters that are explained in the oral tradition. Furthermore, in the Torah itself, the Torah is the prescription for humanity. But the Torah also delineates, sometimes in the text and sometimes in the oral tradition, which segment of humanity is meant to be fulfilling this particular commandment. So, for example, there are commandments that are specific to men. Like there are commandments that are specific to Jews. There are commandments that are specific to non-Jews. Even in the Jewish world, there are commandments specific to men. There are commandments specific to women. There are commandments specific to prophets, to kings, to priests. It's all from the Torah. It's all, and sometimes looking in the text of the Torah, you might say, well, is that for me or is that not for me? So we have an oral tradition that tells us who's for who and what's for what and how to do each of the things. And so without that oral tradition, we're trying to project what I think it means 3,000 years ago based on my sort of superficial understanding of it. One of the reasons why the Torah, why the oral tradition was never meant to be written down, was because the Torah itself is kind of like, it's almost like a code, right? Like you ever have in school like where you had like your own language with your friends and you wanted to speak that, like Pig Latin I guess would be one version, but that's like a really easy one to figure out. But you had like other symbols, or my kids make them all the time. They have like little symbols that they make, right? And that language is meant so that they can like talk what they want to say without the grown-ups knowing what they're talking about, without those that you want that it's directed to in your circle to know what it's talking about. So you create this language that is specific, that only I understand or only we understand, those in the know or whatever. And so that's when it comes to the teachings of the Torah, it was not meant to be per se like an open book, like all of humanity just open it up, and because that's how a lot of times misunderstandings, mistranslations, misinterpretations come about. Because I think it means like this. Well, I read it and I think it means this. Well, I read it and I think it means like this. You know, we find it in the that's part of the squabble between the right and the left politically in America. Like there's no oral tradition, so I say the Bill of Rights means this. Well, I say it means this, right? Second Amendment, I say it means it's a militia. It's talking about the rights of a militia, not an individual. And we say, no, it's talking about an individual. But there wasn't a methodical system handed down, oral tradition. What are they talking about? And so now we're trying to project, based on the wording, and both sides have like a case to make or whatever. And it's going to be interpreted in different ways at different times. But the Torah was given in a methodical way, preserved as it was from Mount Sinai to today, in a generational teacher to student, parent to child way of how exactly to interpret it. And that was done through the Jewish people. The nations of the world are supposed to learn how to live the life of the Torah through the Jewish people. That's what we all kind of know. Not just through opening up Scripture and interpreting it as, oh, well, that's what I think it means, or that's what I was told it means. It's through the Jewish people, in particular through Orthodoxy, because that's when I say the Jewish people, that is the preserved tradition of Torah that has come from Sinai. And so, if there is a verse, or if there is a commandment, or something that is outside the scope of the 7 laws of Noah as far as what should be observed, it's not meant to be observed. It's just not the case. The oral tradition, which is now codified in the Talmud, it gives us the exact parameters as to what commandments are relevant to who and how and when and what. Just looking at Scripture, right? When it says like to put on tefillin, it uses the words, you shall bind these words as a sign upon your arm, and they should be a reminder between your eyes. Well, that's really nebulous, right? Only from the oral tradition do we know, okay, how exactly are these things made, and when do you put them on, and who puts them on. Nothing in there says this is for women, this is for men. We just know from the oral tradition, based on the wording that is used in this secret code called the written Torah, how it is meant to be actually fulfilled. So that applies with every single commandment, every single line in Scripture. That is how we know what it means, through the oral tradition. Without the oral tradition, it's me projecting what I understand or what I think I understand or whatnot into my life. The goal should always be do it through the oral tradition, but that is not something, again, you shouldn't be opening up a page of Talmud also. It's something that you learn from the Jewish nation. That's the idea. Sure.
So, I just want a little bit of clarification because I'm pretty sure I have it, but I do want to ask about it. So if I do choose to go the Noahide route instead of converting for whatever reasons, is it wrong for me to, is it technically wrong for me to keep the Sabbath? Like, I know that I can come here on Saturday and I can still learn. This is a Torah center for learning for whoever.
Yes.
But like I tell my mom when I go visit her, well, today's Saturday, it's a Sabbath. I can't go by with you. I can't go help you shop. It's just not what we do because I follow Torah. Is that wrong for me to tell? Is that wrong for me to say? And should I be, if I desire to, should I not withhold myself from that because I haven't taken on I haven't converted, I haven't taken that on as a Jew?
So it's something I think similar to the Passover suggestion that we were talking about before. So like, in other words, if there are things that you're doing to mark that it's Passover, for instance, eating unleavened bread, right? Do it with a sandwich right next to you so that you're making it completely evident to yourself that I'm not doing this based on obligation. I'm doing this because for other various reasons, commemoration, setting the mindset, whatever the case may be. With the Sabbath, so keeping the Sabbath with the laws and regiments of traditional Judaism is not something that a righteous Gentile is supposed to be embarking on. Again, getting together with a community and praying and studying and eating together, all those things on a designated day in the week, and using it as a day to sort of devote to God. There's nothing wrong with that. But saying I'm not going to get into a car because the Jewish community doesn't get into a car and you're not allowed to light a fire and whatever, that would be something that would be incorrect. Because that format of commemorating the Sabbath with all of those parameters that were assigned to the Jewish community is not something that should just be accepted without being a part of the Jewish community.
Okay, and that applies to the buying and selling.
Even with things like
Okay.
buying and selling as well. Like it shouldn't be like I'm not going with you because it's the Sabbath. It could either be, I prefer not to buy today. Not that I'm obligated or whatever, but again, your mindset should always be, I am not obligated in this, and this is not my prescription.
Okay.
And so there's really, once it's not your prescription, though, you have to ask yourself the question, why am I doing that? Because like, if your mom wants to spend time with you, like, even if that means buying and whatever, if you're not obligated, then well, why not then? Like what would be maybe a time that you could spend more time with your mom, which is more of a commandment for a righteous Gentile than observing the Sabbath. Like we have to keep everything in parameter. I once talked to a young guy who was in the yeshiva. So I became a teacher in the yeshiva after I graduated as a student for only a year or two. One of the young guys who came from a non-religious home, he was going home for, I guess, the summer or whatever, and he was asking questions because his parents, they tried to keep kosher like for him and tried to like do their best and whatever, but he was asking a question because technically speaking, from a halachic, from a Jewish law standpoint, someone that is not Sabbath observant is not, or not Jewish, is not supposed to cook the food for you from beginning till end. In other words, a religious Jew is supposed to be somewhat involved in the cooking process, right? And so the student said, that their parents, they prepare them food, and sometimes they're not home. That all the ingredients are kosher, but they didn't have a hand in it. What should they do about eating it? So I said, wait a second, let me get this straight. So you're putting the stringency of being involved in the cooking process. You're putting that as the main course, but honoring your parents, right, and trying to have a relationship and incorporate them in your life as much as possible, which is a biblical commandment, that you're putting aside. So you're observing the stringency of not eating food that they cook because you didn't have a hand in it, but you're negating the respect and the honor, the love of your parents, the relationship of your parents, which is biblical. So when you put it in perspective, he was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Again, is it in an ideal world, if he can be involved in the cooking? Great. But when he's home and his parents are really trying their best to accommodate him and his newfound religious beliefs, so that's got to be the focus, right? The love and the respect of the parents, which is the biblical, which is what your command is, not a stringency that is something extra, something bonus. So something that you've taken upon yourself, and you prefer not to buy and sell, on Saturday, right? But if your mom's saying, "Hey, let's go shopping," because she wants to spend time with you, it's not because she wants you to go shopping. She wants to spend time with you, right? So maybe, perhaps the way is like, oh, well, part of the 7 laws of Noah, there's not one of the 7 laws of Noah is not honoring parents, but it's within the theme, and it's something that even from Jewish tradition, we learn the concept of how to best honor parents from a non-Jewish person. There was a non-Jewish person in the Talmud. His name was Doma ben Nesina, and he was not Jewish, and he had a very precious stone that they wanted to use for one of the garments in the temple. And so the sages came to him and they wanted to buy, and they offered him a very hefty price for this stone that was going to be used for an amazing purpose. The only problem was that the stone was under the pillow of his father, who was sleeping. And he said, "I'm not going to wake up my father." And again, they offered him lots of money. Said, "No, I'm not." Like, his honoring his parents was utmost importance. And so what happened was, as a reward for that, what ended up happening is the following year, his flock, his farm, gave birth to a red heifer, a red cow, which was used in the process of the paraduma, the purifying ashes in the times of the temple as well. And so they ended up buying that from him, right, the following year. It was sort of his reward for having shown his father the respect and not waking him. So we always have to keep in mind. So again, we learn the concept of honoring parents. Again, it's not one of the 7 laws, but the concept is very much in sync with and part of living a godly life as a non-Jew, respecting our parents, honoring our parents. And so that might be the better focus of maintaining and developing and enriching a relationship with a parent that wants to spend time, rather than this idea that I started doing of not buying and selling, which isn't commanded to me in the first place.
Excellent. Any other questions? Oh, we got one in here.
Rabbi, I got a question on do you have any converts that you know of personally that you in your neighborhood that go to synagogue with you? And also on top of that, what is your neighborhood or your community? What does it look like? Like, what is it? What is the energy? What's the vibe? What is the amount of people? The neighborhood,
Sure.
like the markets, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. So I get this question, for better or worse, quite often, because people, I know that what I'm doing is a rare breed, and a lot of folks from around in different places are like, well, why don't we just move near you and you could be our rabbi and happily ever after. The issue is, I do not have my own. I'm affiliated with the synagogue. I teach adult education there. I'm part of the structure of the synagogue. I'm a respected rabbi amongst other rabbis in our synagogue. But I don't set the rules. I don't set the parameters, the dynamics, and whatever. And and truth be told, and I was sharing this with Richard, I would like to move to the point where I can dedicate the vast majority of my time and my energy towards this type of pursuit and helping non-Jews and Jews, obviously, but helping people connect with God based on where they're at in their life. And so my status as a community rabbi is not maybe what you had in mind or what you're hoping for. But are there converts? Yes, there are converts in a lot of the Orthodox synagogues that I know, and some of them are very respected members of our community. I'm thinking of one right here, right now, who has become just like one of the pillars of our community. He's there every day for minyan. His wisdom and his scholarship are all respected. I mean, he really came full circle. He was a refugee from Cuba. And he he has an amazing story. He was like found on a life raft. I mean, like really just the real. And when it was time for his circumcision, he actually didn't want any like Novocaine or painkillers or anything. He wanted to like feel like, I'm not recommending that, if anyone's pursuing that. But as an adult, he was like, yeah. And I'm like, whoa, but okay, whatever. But that's, so, I mean, he's certainly a loved and respected member of our community, as it always should be. But as far as like, I wouldn't necessarily encourage people. I don't encourage people like, oh, come move down to Florida, come move down to Plantation, and everything's gonna be perfect for you. Because again, I don't set the tone of the synagogue and the community and so forth. It's a wonderful place. I'm happy to be a part of it. But my value, I think, is going to be establishing places that are going to be resources in various places, and sort of being an overseeing body from afar that can help guide people along their journey. And that's why I wanted to come here as well, and encourage people that this shouldn't be the end of our journey, but the beginning of our journey. Those of you who are already part of the ARC program, I'm so happy that you are with us, and I hope that it has been helpful in your journey, and I hope that it continues to be helpful in your journey. I'm not going anywhere. God willing, keep me around 120 years, right? But if you're not yet part of the ARC program, and you do want that sort of extra daily sort of insight and inspiration, and delving into the Torah, the wisdom of the Torah, and how to apply it to your life. And we even have every other week Q&A, where you can ask your questions, and we try to get to as many as we can, and we answer in the time that we have. So if you're not a part of it yet, become a part of it. There's a small fee attached. Just full disclosure, it's $18 a month. Chai, right? $18 a month. We've never turned anyone away. If that's something that's difficult for you, we will welcome you. Or what I often do is I try to find a sponsor, right? Because I could just let you in, or I can include someone else in the mitzvah. I could include someone else in the positive. Like, in other words, it shouldn't just be me like letting you in and I get the mitzvah and you get the mitzvah for studying Torah. Let someone else also be a part of it, and let's help grow the organization and the impact together. That's why I put it up there. It's not like, oh, I'm not going to let you in unless we get a sponsor. It's like, let's try to include someone else in the process, and that way someone feels like I'm not just I'm really a part of it. Someone's sponsoring me, and I can take it seriously because I know someone's sponsoring me. When you, like I said earlier, with the mezuzah and with the books, if you take something for free, usually you don't treasure it. Usually you don't take it seriously. And so if they just let you in, okay, it'll be like watching anything on YouTube or whatever. But if you know that, like, okay, even if I can't afford the $18, someone is paying for me the $18, I'm going to take it a little bit more seriously because, like, there's someone involved over here. So if you would like to be a part of it, I highly encourage you, again, do it today before you forget, before the world takes over and you get washed away in the tumultuous waters that are this world. arcprogram.org. It's an easy setup. If you need a sponsor, you can reach out to me, or if you want to be a sponsor to somebody else, you can reach out to me, and happy to facilitate that. It can all be anonymous, whatever it is, but we want everyone to, who wants to participate, to have a resource to go to.
So I have one more question.
Sure.
And this is to the end of days. After Gog and Magog and the Mashiach comes and the temple's rebuilt, Hashem will revive everyone again and judge everyone righteously. What I was particularly wondering, King David will be revived. The Mashiach comes in the line of King David. What will be and of course thinking about the Aaronic priesthood with Aaron, what will be the authority structure for like King David himself and Aaron?
Well, King David will have, it's kind of like, Professor Emeritus. So, like, you respect the authority of that individual. Like, the person's been teaching American history for 50 years, and now they're retiring, but they're always remembered and recalled and even consulted as, like, professor emeritus, 50 years of knowledge. He's not an active teacher anymore, professor, but he's still respected in that particular role. I would say probably that they'll have the status of like professor emeritus. King David as the first, as the first in the Davidic line, and subsequently all the other righteous kings, Solomon as well, and ultimately all under the authority of the kingship of Mashiach. But believe me, they won't just be discarded. They'll probably have a status that is similar to like professor emeritus.
I didn't have a question, but just when you explain about how the Torah is like a code, it makes perfect sense. I understand it. Why why it has to be done a certain way. That makes. Thank you for saying it that way.
Sure.
That's what we want. Any other questions before we close out for today? Yes.
So, serving God and building a relationship with Him and His people. We talk about whether you choose to stay a righteous Gentile or pursue conversion. If you decide to stay at a certain point where you're a righteous Gentile and you have the 7 laws of Noah, so is there at that point where you can take on more or of the laws, or do you have to at that point pursue the path of conversion?
It would really only be if you're if you've made the decision, I want to convert to Orthodox Judaism, that you would sort of take on more of the things. Otherwise, there's no. But let's be real over here, okay? So it's not just living according to 7 laws. There's a lot more to it than that. And what the 7 laws don't specifically encompass, but they create a theme and an environment of how to live one's life. So in other words, again, if you've rejected idolatry and you believe in God and you want to have a relationship with God, which was what we're supposed to do, you got to enhance that relationship with God, which means you got to learn about God, which is a lifetime pursuit. You got to pray to God, which is a lifetime pursuit, and developing prayer and how prayer works and all of the ins and outs, not only learning about it, but then utilizing it. A lot of us like to learn about it, like, oh, that's so interesting. And then we pray like, what, just rumble through words. So implementing all of these things is a lifetime journey. And even the things that are not necessarily categorically under the laws of Noah, like honoring parents and giving tzedakah and just being a moral person in all manifestations. When you go to work every day, a lot of people say, oh, well, I don't have any rituals to do. Well, Judaism is not based on rituals. In fact, there is no word in biblical Hebrew for religion. Like, that's kind of an oversight, right? Because it ain't a religion. In fact, most of Judaism, where does most of Judaism exist? In the home. Right? With what you eat, with the Sabbath. These are types of things. But where else? In your business. Right? That you're acting according, that you're fulfilling the laws of commerce, that you're acting in a moral way, ethically, that you're treating your business. And let's be real, quantitatively throughout our day, where are we spending most of our time and energy? Our business or our household. So if you're not going to work, if you're not going to a traditional work setting, if you're a stay-at-home mom or dad and you're homeschooling and whatnot, so you know what your job in religion is? Teaching your kids, spending your day. That's your religion. That's how you express your religion. You don't need all of the bells and whistles, we'll call them, of the commandments, of fulfilling the commandments in action. You have plenty of Torah to teach them. You have plenty of moral advice to give them, plenty of stories and field trips and things to teach them the ways of God, right? And that is our mission. The vast majority of our day is not spent in prayer, for better or worse, right? But that's the lives that we live. But the idea is to bring Torah, the Torah mindset, to wherever we are in our day. Whether I'm standing in line at Walmart to get diapers, right? Which is to promote my family's well-being. We can think of everything as a way of serving God, right? In fact, in Psalm 6, It says, Shavisi Hashem lenegdi tamid. I have set God before me at all times. What does that mean? So the Baal Shem Tov says that Shavisi comes from the word shave, which means equal, meaning that God is before me at all times equally, whether I'm praying or whether I'm standing in the line at Walmart to buy diapers. If I have a godly mentality, a Torah mentality, that this is all for a purpose, this is all for the divine, this is on. Why are you raising a family? Why? Oh, so you can teach your values, that you teach the Torah, spread the word of God to the next generation. Right? Not that you shouldn't enjoy the experience of having a family, but why do you? What's the core? What are you meant to? What's your job as a parent? Is to convey God's wisdom and will to live a moral life to your children, and what that incorporates is buying diapers sometimes, and is going on field trips and places and tours and teaching them things along the way. And with that mentality, right, you say, oh, there's no rituals. Those are rituals. Buying diapers is a ritual that serves God. When you go with the mentality that I'm doing all these things to serving God, that is a ritual. What if you said, you know what, I don't want to buy diapers today? Are you serving God or you're not serving God? You're not serving God, because that's not going to provide. That's not going to provide for the well-being of your family. You could have a kid that's a mess, right? He's not going to grow up feeling loved and happy with just their parents that just let them go in. So going to the store and buying diapers is a ritual that you're doing to serve God with the right mentality. If it's about serving God, then everything that we do can be serving God. But if it's about me and what I want and what I think is spiritual and what I think is connecting with God, it's a whole different story. Our rituals that we do to serve God, no matter who you are in the human family, look differently, but it's all done. The Talmud teaches that if God would have commanded us to chop wood, we would have done it, and if that was a mitzvah to chop wood, right, we would have done it. Okay, so there's nothing inherently spiritual about chopping wood, right? But if that was one of the commandments, so would you also be saying, like, I really, really want to chop wood on Wednesdays at 6:00 when the Jewish people are commanded to? That's not your thing, right? There's nothing inherently spiritual about it, right? God said to do it, so you do it. But God said in the code of morality that is for all humanity, preserve a family, instill values, and all of the rituals that come with it are mechanisms of serving God. From the buying of the diapers to the sitting with the Torah in front of you in a children's Torah book and teaching them the stories, it's all serving God. All right?
In this journey that we're in right now, real quickly, because we have, generally speaking in here, of course, it's righteous Gentiles at this point, people who may be wanting to convert, at a future later date. For those, we're addressing a lot for those who want to become, righteous Gentile. Obviously, this is the place. You can come in here. It's a platform. Come and learn Torah and whatnot, and that infrastructure is here. For those who maybe in the future want to convert in the process of orthodoxy, if they wanted to do something like that, and just more for knowledge, could they start a training with the Orthodox community while they're still not in the community, or they have to inclusively move into the community before they even start? Or can the conversion lead to, okay, eventually you're going to have to move here? You can start your training now, but you're going to eventually have to move here. How does that really work out? This is more for purposes, again, for people who may want to go that route.
Yeah, practically speaking, a beis din, a rabbinic court, is not really going to consider you of like candidate status until you're living in a place where you can observe a fully Jewish life. In other words, you have the resources around. You have a synagogue near you, have kosher food available, that you're living within walking distance to that synagogue, and that you've kind of developed a relationship with that in that particular way, just for practical purposes. But learning is something that you can always do, and sort of like learning even in general what the parameters are and what that would even mean. You can always read about it and kind of get an understanding of what that means. But as far as application or being considered like a candidate for conversion, you'd kind of have to position yourself with a congregation and sort of an overseeing rabbi that's local to you that can see that, okay, Jimmy shows up every week on Shabbat and he prays and he's involved, and all of the things that would make up and go through and for your own sake to spend time also going through all of the year, all of the holidays, and getting the experience and exposure of what that's actually like. Reading about it's one thing, but experiencing it in the community sense is a different thing. And so that's really the only way to do it.
I want to make sure in the line of my husband always says staying in my own lane, doing what we're supposed to do with where God has us now. But because of our journey, for instance, we have mezuzahs on our doors. And my husband taught all of us, and we have 4 children we raised in this from the beginning in Messianic Judaism.
Right.
Yeah. So he taught us that the mezuzah was a reminder of something that we do in the physical to remind us of something in the spiritual, that we are taking his word to our mouth. Is it wrong for us, if we are not converting, to continue to have the mezuzahs?
I would say, since they're already up and since you're treating them respectfully, that I don't know that you have to go take them all down, but just remember for yourself why they're there and that they're sort of a part of that journey. If you hadn't put them up yet and you were asking, should we put them up, I would say, probably not, because it's a commandment in the Torah. There's no reason for it. But if they're already up and they're being treated with respect, so you could probably leave them there as like a reminder of your personal journey of how you got to where you are today.
And would we be insulting to a Jew?
No. A lot of things in life, as we know, are about awareness and consciousness, and sort of the mindfulness that we project on something. And so, if you're having it up for reasons, not because it's a commandment, but because along your journey this was something that originally you had done, I think it's a powerful reminder of where you came from and where you're going. And I really respect your sincerity and your passion in moving in the right direction and learning and asking questions like that. That's why a community where people are coming from all different sorts of backgrounds and are in different stages and different points along the path. It's important to not necessarily live your life or do things in your life just because your neighbor or your friend or your community member is doing it. Each person's situation will have a specific answer, and that's totally legit. Everyone, there can be more than one expression of truth. There's only one truth, that's the Torah. But the way that is manifest in different people's lives at different times may vary.